I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Monroe County Plan Commission. Ms. Nestor Jelen, if you would kindly call the roll.
Sure. David Bush.
Here.
Margaret Clemens.
Here.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Rudy Fields.
Here.
David Henry.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Edward Ullman. Julie Thomas. Okay, so we have 7 members attending in person and a quorum.
Okay, great. Now, would you kindly introduce the evidence?
Sure. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County Development Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Comprehensive Plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Plan Commission Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended. And the cases that were legally advertised and as scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'll call the roll.
And let the record reflect that Commissioner Thomas has arrived.
I will go ahead and call the roll on the introduction of evidence. A vote yes is a vote to approve the introduction of evidence. Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
David Henry.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Edward Ullman. Oh, sorry. Julie Thomas.
Yes, I'm here.
David Bush.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 8-0.
Director Jelen, have there been changes to the agenda since this was printed as far as the Holland Fields or any other item?
We have had a request for continuance for items 5 and 6, and we're prepared to give a small presentation, but otherwise there have not been any changes to the agenda.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the agenda as advertised and as Ms. Nestor Jelen has just described?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, a vote yes is a vote to approve the agenda as posted. Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
David Henry.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
David Bush.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Motion is approved 8-0.
And there are 2 sets of minutes on our in our packet and advertised. Is there a motion to approve those either collectively or individually?
I move approval of both the January 21st and February 18th, 2025 minutes.
Second.
The motion is second to approve both January 21st and February 18th, 2025 minutes. A vote yes is a vote to approve both sets of minutes. Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
David Henry.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
David Bush.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Motion is approved 8-0.
Okay, we're moving on to administrative business, and the first order of business under that category is to administer the oath of office to my colleague, County Council Member David Henry, and welcome to the Plan Commission. I know you've attended some meetings virtually and our administrative meeting in person, but I want to welcome you to the Plan Commission, and if you would kindly raise your right hand. And do you, David Henry,
I, David Henry,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the constitutions of the United States of America
and of the state of Indiana,
and of the state of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform my duties
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform my duties
as a Monroe County Plan Commission member
as a Monroe County Plan Commission member
according to the law and to the best of my skill and ability.
according to the law and to the best of my skill and ability.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you with us with your various skills and expertise. So we move on now to the CDO amendment prioritization list. Ms. Nestor Jelen?
Yes, I am just keeping this under the administrative business so it's easily reached by anyone in the public. Tonight, we'll actually be hearing 2 rezones that are from this prioritization list, but if anyone is interested in still tracking the CDO tabled items from when we adopted the full CDO on December 18th, 2024, we have been taking a few items to the Ordinance Review Committee, and from there, it will become actual text amendments that will go before the Plan Commission and ultimately the county commissioners for a decision. So that's the latest update.
Madam President, I have a clarification question.
Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
So the prioritization list, I guess I want to unpack that just a bit and see if I'm correct. So we had that list put together as future amendments through the CDO process. The rezone was added after the adoption of the CDO, so that wasn't an unresolved issue. So to dovetail that into the the list of future amendments or prioritization, list is kind of convoluted because am I saying that correctly? And if you'd like to kind of restate that, that would be good.
Sure. So the CDO prioritization list does include both the tabled items from the Plan Commission administrative work sessions and the vote by the Plan Commission to forward the CDO to the county commissioners. And then at the hearing of the county commissioners, they added an item which is to do 2 different rezones. So we've combined that list because the CDO did pass, and along each step of the way, there were things that were added. So it's one consolidated spot to see those changes.
Right, but the Plan Commission was asked to make a recommendation on the CDO that didn't include the rezone that you're lumping into the prioritization. I'm going to get that word correct, don't worry. It just seems convoluted because that was added not at the discretion of the Plan Commission, that was added from the county commissioners, and we voted on a CDO with future amendments that didn't have that. So to kind of lump that in with that list seems a little disingenuous, in my opinion.
And I think that you have an opportunity to vote on those items tonight. And also, I'll point your attention to the agenda under new business. It does say that the request is specifically by the commissioners. So on the agenda and as legally noticed, it does differentiate.
There was just a lot of discussion and conversation about the list of future amendments, and it feels like this is being tagged as one of those, which wasn't deliberated by the Plan Commission.
Well, it will be tonight, and thank you for sharing your comments, Mr. Enright Randolph. And so I also want to thank staff for your expert guidance through the CDO process and through this CDO amendment process and the prioritization process. I feel that we're in good hands and we've gotten a lot done. So thank you for all of your help and services to the community and the way you specifically, which I really appreciate, went through every single comment that was given by the public and by other interested organizations as we deliberated the CDO. I really appreciate that. And I would like to move on now to unfinished business. And the first item under unfinished business is item number 1, SPP 24-4, Southern Meadows Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Amendment 2. And this is the final hearing concerning 95 parcels on 37 plus or minus acres in sections 20 and 21 of Perry Township at South Rogers Street and South College Drive. Now, I believe that Mr. Myers will be reviewing this case with us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. So this is the final hearing. So we did hear this at the prior Plan Commission hearing on February 18th, 2025, as well as most recently at the Plan Commission admin meeting on March 4th, 2025. And I will provide some updates with respect to those respective meetings in a moment. But first, I'll give a quick summary of what this petition is. The petitioner requests to amend the phasing schedule of the Southern Meadows Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Phases 1, 2, and 3 have been platted and recorded. The acquisition of building permits and the construction of single-family residences within each of the 3 phases is ongoing. The petitioner now requests new configuration of phases 4 through 6. Phase 4 will be split up into 2 non-contiguous sections with a total of 16 lots and will include the construction of the road connection to South College Drive. Phase 5 will be reconfigured and consists of 10 lots. Phase 6 will be split up into 2 non-contiguous sections with a total of 10 lots and will include the construction of the asphalt side path to Clear Creek Elementary. Although Phase 4 and Phase 6 involve non-contiguous sections, each phase will be built out as if it were one contiguous phase. And after reviewing the language in the 1997 Subdivision Control Ordinance, the legal department confirmed that the Subdivision Control Ordinance does not preclude developers from using this strategy for configuring subdivision phases. The approval of this preliminary plat amendment will retain the original plan for the roadway connection to South College Drive to occur within Phase 4. And the additional turn lane on South Old State Road 37 onto South Orchard Lane will also remain with Phase 4 under this preliminary plat amendment. The asphalt side path to Clear Creek Elementary will remain with Phase 6. So some new language with this update for tonight's meeting. This preliminary plat amendment also involves a change to the written commitment. See Exhibits 7 and 8 in the staff report with respect to the improvements currently detailed to occur under Phase 4 through Phase 6. The written commitment amendment, specifically Exhibit 8, updates the timeline for completion of these offsite improvements and establishes commitments to the timing of their completion. For example, the petitioner commits to the installation of the roadway from South Abington Avenue to South College Drive to be installed prior to recording the final plat for Phase 4, save for final asphalt coat, sidewalks, and street trees. So on the screen now is a summary of the offsite required improvements, including the additional turn lane on South Rogers Street to access the subdivision off of via West that road. That will be completed with Phase 5 and will be installed prior to recording of the final plat for Phase 5. The additional turn lane to access Orchard Lane from South Old State Road 37, that will be completed with Phase 4 and will be installed prior to the recording of Phase 4. The asphalt side path connection to Clear Creek Elementary, as I had stated previously, will be completed with Phase 6. And finally, the multi-use asphalt path along South Rogers Street, terminating at the end, the south end of the Blind Squirrels LLC property, will be completed with Phase 5, unless the CI&L project, which is the Blind Squirrels project, improvements are completed. Are incomplete at that time. The multi-use path will be constructed within 270 days of completion of the CI&L improvements. And that is all the language that is updated language that is included in the written commitment amendment for this petition. On the screen now, I have a diagram that shows the different phases for this amendment. As you can see in the red text, those phases 1, 2, and 3 are platted. And as I stated before, building out of homes in those phases is ongoing. You can see Phase 4 in green is divided up into 2 non-contiguous sections, as described. Phase 5 in blue, and then Phase 6 in the purple-pink color, also non-contiguous sections. The petitioner did provide a rationale as to why they wanted this phasing schedule, and it is more or less involving economic conditions related to the build-out of the homes on the cul-de-sacs, if you will, of Phase 6. Basically, they state that there's not as much market demand for walkout basements. So they're wanting to go ahead and tackle the phases or the lots that could accommodate a more slab type design rather than the walkout basement design. There were a lengthy list of original conditions of approval for this major subdivision. This is included in your staff packet, and we've gone over this in length. I can come back to this if we have any questions. And the slide also includes additional conditions of approval from the original approval of the subdivision. Bit of background. So on the screen is a brief timeline of the process or progress for this subdivision, starting from January 21st, 2020, when it was originally approved, all the way to the most recent application for you this evening with this amendment. As I stated before, the build out of the phases 1, 2, and 3 is ongoing. Approximately 75% of Phase 1 is built out with homes, 64% of Phase 2, and 74% of Phase 3. The next few slides are some summary information regarding the subdivision improvement agreements for the public improvements that are required throughout the subdivision with respect to each phase. So I am going to click through these because we've talked about these before in the previous meetings, but if we have any questions or concerns about any of this subdivision improvement agreement information, we can come back to these slides. On the screen now is the single parcel. It's showing up as two just because of the GIS, but the yellow and the blue outline are the remaining area that is to be cut up into phases 4, 5, and 6. And then just some aerial imagery of those respective areas of the property. So the connection to South College Avenue via Abington Avenue is to cut through here and connect there. Okay, so this is the highway comments section. This is the same comments that we had received with the last hearing. I don't have any updated language from the highway department at this time, and I'm not sure if anyone is online. There's a number of highway department members or employees are away at a conference, so I'm not sure who might be online to answer any specific highway department questions, but we can certainly ask if they are online. Stormwater comments, I do have some updates related to that. Planning staff did meet with the petitioner as well with the highway department and stormwater program manager to discuss some details, and the stormwater program manager brought up this detail about stormwater inlets that were mislocated, if you will, near the West That Road intersection of South Rogers Street. And the petitioner provided as-built to the stormwater program manager that you can see on the right side of the screen. And these as-built were deemed sufficient per Erica Penna, the stormwater program manager. Floodplain comments, we've discussed this at length. Essentially, in a nutshell, the current entrance, the main entrance through West That Road and the South Rogers Street intersection is mostly is within floodplain. And that was identified through the review of the floodplain administrator, and there's a lot of other details related to the floodplain on the property as well, based on the analysis of consultants and others that have been involved, specifically the DNR using the Indiana Floodplain Information Portal, as well as the DNR Flood Analysis and Regulatory Assessment, basically verifying that there is floodplain at that intersection. So that is why the connection to South College Drive through the subdivision is paramount to provide safety and access to the subdivision. So again, all of this is in the staff report. So on the screen now you have the floodplain analysis and regulatory assessment, as well as some as-built, or these might not be as-built per se, but they're engineered designs that indicate the elevations of the property in this section that confirms that it is below the floodplain, base flood elevation, excuse me. So the floodplain administrator did provide some comments. These are all included in the staff report. We do have an updated letter from the petitioner that's dated March 4th. So basically it's indicating to the Plan Commission the process of the new phases, the inclusion of the lots phases within phase 4, 5, and 6 respectively, as well as detailing the offsite improvements and their decision to go ahead and amend the written commitment to provide a timeline as requested by staff. So this is the original phasing schedule for the subdivision. This is the updated one, just without the colors, as I have shown previously. This is the original letter of a results letter, excuse me, for the subdivision's first approval by the Plan Commission. This is the original written commitment, and this is the written commitment amendment. The red text that you see here is staff reviewed track changes along with the legal department to just correct some of the formalities of the letter. So if you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. We did receive an anonymous complaint letter. This was mentioned during the admin meeting. This was received by planning staff before the admin meeting or after the admin meeting packet was published. So you each got a physical copy during that meeting, but I've also included it on the screen here. It's a complaint regarding drainage with respect to the entrance of West That Road and the subdivision. Okay, that brings me to staff's recommendation. Staff recommends approval of this preliminary plat amendment to alter the phasing subject to highway engineer and stormwater program manager reports following the conditions. 1, all prior conditions of approval, Exhibit 6 of this packet, are in effect. And 2, the petitioner agrees to and record a written commitment within 14 days of the preliminary plat amendment approval with the following requirements. And I'm going to read these out. Letter A, install a roadway from South Abington Avenue to South College Drive prior to recording the final plat for Phase 4. The standard for this roadway per this condition would be installation of all improvements excepting final surface coat, sidewalks, and street trees per the approved plans. Provide and comply with an inspection schedule with the highway department so that there is confirmation of the proper installation of this connection by the highway engineer prior to recording Phase 4. Letter B, install the turn lane on South Old State Road 37 prior to recording Phase 4. Provide and comply with an inspection schedule with the highway department so that there is confirmation of the proper installation of this connection by the highway engineer prior to recording Phase 4. C, install the turn lane on South Rogers Street prior to recording Phase 5. Provide and comply with an inspection schedule with the highway department so that there is confirmation of the proper installation of this connection by the highway engineer prior to recording Phase 5. So the petitioner submitted a proposed written commitment amendment detailing the completion timeline of each offsite improvement with respect to specific phases in the major subdivisions continued development. So those details are on the screen as well, detailing those offsite improvements and their timeline with respect to each phase. And then finally, staff did note that we were unsure if the petitioner had reached out directly to the Blind Squirrels group, the developers of the CI&L project, which is immediately adjacent to them along South Rogers Street, to see if that timeline of planning out the multi-use path along South Rogers Street was amenable to them with respect to timing it with Phase 5 or being constructed within 270 days upon completion of the CI&L improvement project. So now I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. That was really a great run-through. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Myers or the rest of the staff? I'll look to my left.
I do. Look behind you. At some
Oh,
point.
yes, thank you, Commissioner Thomas.
Behind you. Behind you all the way. Can you, you touched on this, but can you review the situation with the connection to that road and whether we have, and I cannot see from here whether we have our stormwater manager, Ms. Penna, online. I don't know if she's available or not, but certainly in terms of the floodway, Ms. Bierman can help us, I would assume. But so what happened with, they had a permit, but something happened and now they have to reapply for a permit?
Yes, so they had originally received a permit through DNR to do work in the floodplain, and that permit had expired. So then having to reapply for that permit to work in the floodplain takes quite a bit of time. So I think that is why they have decided to work on that improvement with respect to Phase 5, trying to plan out the need for getting that permit's approval situated from the DNR, and the floodplain administrator can add more detail to that answer.
You.
Yeah, and then one other thing that came up was there was fill that was added to the floodway as a result of the development of 3 of the residential lots. And so that did indicate that there was a rise in the base flood elevation out there. It's a little one, but it still matters. And so they need to resolve that at the same time, I think, as making those improvements at the intersection and applying for a single permit.
Thank you.
Is Ms. Pena online?
I'll just note, we did receive an email from the highway department. They're all at the Purdue Road School,
see.
so they will not be in attendance tonight.
I see, okay. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Thomas.
Great, thank you.
Okay, do other members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Yes, Colonel Ferris.
So the March 4th letter to us concerning the actions and the timelines for completing those actions, has that been shared with the Highway Department?
Yes, that's my understanding. It was all communicated through our meeting mutually with the Highway Department, Stormwater Program Manager, and staff and the petitioner.
What was their response?
Can't recall their direct response. They didn't respond in any way of saying that, they disapprove of the format and of staff's recommendation that I can directly recall.
Well, I guess my question is that if I would go to the Highway Department and ask them if they're happy with the recommendations and what staff has actually put together here, I don't think we have a comment from them, correct?
Yes, I did not receive any direct new information from them with respect to their final recommendation. But if you will note in the recommended motion that this information is all shared between the departments, that our recommendation has multiple instances of scheduling inspections with the Highway Department to confirm the proper installation of those improvements as the project continues.
Just trying to make sure that the Highway Department is happy.
Sure.
That's all I'm trying to do.
I think that at the meeting that we had with the developer and the surveyor, we obviously would all like to see the turn lane from South Rogers Street to be going in sooner. But due to the status of the DNR permit and the level of small rise, we know that we're not able to really hold it to this phase of phase 4, because it's going to take a certain amount of time that's kind of out of the petitioner's control. They are working through getting that permit through DNR, and we wish they would have gotten it done before their permit expired, but this is just where we are at today. So I think with that, they are acknowledging, and they think that this is certainly a stronger written commitment than the prior one. So this written commitment will actually have staff hold on to the creation of those lots contingent upon these improvements being made and inspected. So we hope that this is a better approach.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll turn now to the petitioner, the petitioner's representative. And if you would kindly sign in, Mr. Borgman, and state your name and
Yes, hello. My name is Todd Borgman. I represent a petitioner, Somo Development. I know everyone's very familiar with this project. It's been here for several years, and this particular petition has been here for several months. So I know at the end of the last meeting, it was requested by this commission and Commissioner Thomas that it be delegated to the planning department and the developer to work out a compromise when it comes to this petition. And I think that we have achieved that. We have met and worked with planning staff over the last month. We have their approval. We agree with their agreements, and we would appreciate your approval on this going forward. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Mr. Borgman, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Borgman? I don't see any. So we'll hear now from the public. Are there members of the public who are in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the podium and sign in. Or if you are online, raise your virtual hand so that you could be recognized. See anyone? Okay. Are there members of the public who are in opposition to this petition? Yes. I see. I see. Okay, great. And will you be presenting separately or together for one 3-minute slot or two?
We're always together.
It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, I think it's pretty short.
And just please introduce yourselves and then you'll.
Randy Cassidy
Yes.
with CINL.
Yes.
Tamby Weichel Cassidy with CINL. So basically, just want to say that I hope that we're able to move this forward so that these improvements can get done, especially the ones that were committed to by the developer before the current owners even owned that property and before I was even allowed to bring a petition forward for my PUD. the Plan Commission committed or made the developer commit to making these improvements along South Roger Street and that road. So please do what it takes, for that to be able to get done. The only reason there's not a floodway permit is because there were 2 permits. And once you have a second permit and it expires with the state, it is not renewable. It would not have been allowed to expire. We inquired about it last year. It's why we rushed to get our sewer laterals across under South Roger Street and get done and get out of the floodway so that our work on CINL side is out of the floodway for phases 1 and 2. So please honor those commitments that the county made last time because that was all part of our tearing down our building and allowing them to come through and make the road to connect to their project. Otherwise, they would have had no connection at all. So they made commitments to us as well to do that road, to do that improvement, to do that intersection. And please, let's promote what it takes to help them get it done, not to hinder it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to ask, do we hear a rebuttal? Because that was neither for nor against.
I do think, I didn't know if they wanted to speak to a question really quickly that's in the report, but I think that you still have to call for opposition because you were on support and then they spoke. I think.
Okay. Are there members of the public who are in opposition to this petition? I think I did that.
Did that? Okay.
Yeah.
So then I think because someone did speak, they could.
Yes, so Mr. Boardman or Mr. Winiger, if you would like to speak and respond to that request? No? Okay, then we bring it back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph.
There's a lot of petitions that kind of don't necessarily move in the ideal manner, and we've seen a few of those. I do think what planning has put together allows us to move forward and achieve those public improvement projects. And also, I think there's a few other commitments with kind of the multi-use trail connection and other things that wouldn't have been put in place until they got to those certain phases. So I'm willing to support this. It's not a position I like to be in because there's been a lot of issues with this petition, but I feel like this is the best situation that we have.
Is there anyone else who would like? Yes, Council Member Henry.
Thank you, Madam President. Or I guess it's President here, isn't it? We'll go with President. I do it at the other meeting. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
I just want to thank both staff and petitioner for their perseverance on working through this. I know we've been on this matter for a few months now, or at least since I've been involved with Plan Commission, and to get to a place where we can get to an accommodation to move forward. I also just want to say again, I do appreciate that we will have another ingress and egress in that neighborhood for our emergency services personnel to get in and out of there, which was a priority concern of mine as we moved this through. So thank you all concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else care to say something? I just want to say one thing. I think the testimony tonight really describes how interrelated all these moving parts are. And we are a community and we want all of the approved projects to be successful and to not be as cost enhancing for the developers. And so we do have to be concerned about the safety of the property owners and of future property owners and of people who currently live there. And so I really commend staff and the petitioner for working through this and coming up with a solution. We hope we can get DNR on board sooner rather than later, but there are a lot of moving parts. So thank you for working through that. So is there a motion on this?
I can make one.
Yes.
For case SPP-24-4, the Southern Meadows Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Amendment 2, I move approval of the preliminary plat amendment to alter the phasing subject to highway engineer and stormwater program manager reports with the conditions listed in the packet. Jackie, do you need me to read all that?
If there are no changes, then that's okay.
Okay, with the changes as presented in the packet.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve SPP 24-4 Southern Meadows Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Amendment 2. This is the final hearing with the conditions as stated in the staff report. I'll go ahead and call the roll. A vote yes is a vote to approve. Rudy Fields,
Yes.
David Henry,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
I'm going to vote present.
David Bush,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Okay, motion does carry 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the second item under unfinished business, and this is SPP 24-5, Highland Park Estates Major Subdivision Phase 5 Preliminary Plat, and this is the final hearing concerning one parcel on 4.16 plus or minus acres in Richland Township, Section 13. And if Mr. Smith, you'd review this with us, we'd be most grateful.
Absolutely. So this hopefully won't take too much of your time, but I am just going to recap what the proposal is about. So this is a 5-lot major subdivision with one common area. The purpose is just to receive approval for the Highland Park Estates Phase 5 major subdivision preliminary plat. And that is just to be able to continue work with final platting, as well as a waiver to the road width to Appendix 856-1 street cross-section drawings. So again, brief summary, just to recap, Highland Park Estates Phases 3, 4, and 5 received preliminary plat approval prior to this meeting, and that was on September 19th, 2017. Phases 3 and 4 have already gone through the final plat processing. They've already been recorded. Now this is going to be for Phase 5. Phase 5, again, was previously approved, but the plat has since expired. Preliminary plats are only good for 2 years after the date of approval. And this plat has since expired, so they're coming back under the old code to receive approval and then work on finishing out that remainder phase. I just want to go through here. At the last meeting, I had presented a discrepancy where the cross-section drawings were not lining up with what was actually completed on site. So the roadway that was put in, which is there currently, is 24 feet across. It was supposed to be 26 according to the cross-section drawing. So planning staff had recommended denying the waiver of final hearing, coming back to this hearing while we gather more information. And we did receive more information. So just to recap and looking at my notes that I've got here. So planning staff did consult with the highway engineer, as well as Lisa Ridge, the highway director, and Daniel Butler, the petitioner's engineer, just to see like what could be done to remedy this. So for people listening at home, in order to get accepted into the right-of-way, or I should say the roadway inventory, the roadways need to meet compliance. So in this case, we didn't want to necessarily approve or recommend approval for something that would otherwise not be accepted into the inventory. So one of the suggestions that the highway department recommended, for changing the street cross section on the plans to show 24-foot road design instead of the 26, but also commit to placing no parking signs on one side of Denise, Cheryl, and Emma Drive, since those roadways do not meet the 26-foot requirement. And that would be part of the request to get accepted into the inventory. And the Highway Department seemed amenable to that. They seem to generally support that. So that is why in the staff recommendation, in addition to condition number 1, which is that the developer submit a written commitment to planning and legal departments stating the timeline for completing improvements within phases 2, 3, 4, and now 5, and requesting acceptance into the road inventory. Number 2, the developer and/or HOA commits to petitioning the Traffic Commission for a no parking sign on one side of Denise, Cheryl, and Emma Drive as part of the request of acceptance into the county inventory. And condition number 3, which is to change the street cross-section on the plans to show a 24-foot wide road design standard to match the construction plans. So staff's recommendation of approval otherwise does not change other than those conditions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Okay, and I don't know if Mr. Butler, if you would like to speak, you please sign in, and you'll have 15 minutes.
All right. Yeah, situation where it built at 24 feet and just trying to make something out of it that would work for everyone at this point. So that's what we had come up with staff, and after talking with the highway department, but I can answer any further questions at this time.
Okay, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Butler? Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
Just kind of the condition to the developer or the HOA commits to petitioning the Traffic Commission for a no parking sign. Is that fine? Are you willing to commit to it? I feel like that has to be something that's voluntarily done by the petitioner.
We're willing to, and that seemed like the way that the highway department wanted to accept this into their inventory at this time, considering that those constructed that way.
I guess that might be a question for staff as well. Do they need to commit to that? So they need to update a letter? And do you feel comfortable or do we have a letter that shows that commitment?
I don't believe we've received a written commitment yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. We were trying to get that in time for this meeting, but instead we're doing a condition of approval if that's possible, amenable to the Plan Commission.
And that's where my question is. Can we condition this? Because we can't condition things that are voluntarily committed by the petitioner or developer. So I just want to make sure we stay out of that gray area. I'm fine with moving forward and then conditioning it to a letter, but
Give Director Jelen an opportunity to respond. Is Mr. Schilling here?
Yes, he just walked away.
Okay, so sorry.
I would state that, for the record, when we did talk to the highway engineer and Lisa Ridge as well, the highway director, this is a requirement for getting the project into the county inventory. The lots are platted with the roadways as public. So it's already part of the platting process that they would be considered public and get into the inventory. If we want to reword statement 2, we can, and just make that part of the written commitment. I don't see any harm in that. If they're agreeable to it, it's either way.
To me, I think that the issue is, do we wait for another meeting until the written commitment is in, or do we find another solution that the staff is so expertly crafted involving the highway department and the petitioner? So I think that you found a really great solution, and you also averted problems along the way. And so I commend you for that. And I wonder, Mr. Butler, do you have any objections to what Director Jelen just described?
No, we can include that in the commitment letter if that's fine with us.
I'll just give two updates. One
Yes.
is Mr. Kreider did come in and submit to us as-built for the roadways and the stormwater, which was helpful. But he did not yet do the as-built for the sidewalk and said that he wanted to have an on-site meeting before he did those, since he's acknowledging there probably are issues. So there has been progress made towards item number 1. We were hopeful that we could get a written commitment by tonight, but maybe if there's a question for Mr. Schilling, there was a statement in the conditions for tonight that number 1, they submit a written commitment. If that occurs after tonight's vote, could I take it to an administrative meeting of the Plan Commission just for their review, or is it something that needs to happen at a regular meeting?
If that's part of the motion,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's,
Okay.
if you did want oversight into that written commitment, including item 1 and 2, then we could do that.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. If everyone feels comfortable with that and it can be reviewed in the staff level, then we would be willing to commit that, and the commitment letter would contain items 1 and 2, commit to all those,
Right, we don't want to hinder the progress, but we feel that, that great strides have been made to catch what could have been an error, and the no parking signs on one side of the street seem to be a great solution and enables the project to go forward. So with that being said, if you have no objections or nothing further to say, I'll move to the public. Okay, thank you, Mr. Butler. Are there members of the public who are in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the podium. Hi, how are you? Okay, so if there are members of the public who are online and would like to speak on this matter, please raise your virtual hand, and I won't be able to tell. Are there members of the public who are opposed to this petition? If so, please come to the podium in the Nat Hill room or raise your virtual hand online. So there's no dispute here, so we turn back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion.
You mentioned updating the conditions. How would you recommend going about that?
So if you wanted to add, as part of the staff packet, which is on the screen, instead of number 2, you could make that a little a and make that under number 1. So the written commitment would include 1 and 2, which would then be A. And then at the end of that statement, you could say, you could bring the written commitment to a Plan Commission administrative meeting for final approval and state the date of that administrative meeting, the next one being April the 1st.
If I might.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
I don't think that's necessary. I think that's a lot of additional work and time. I mean, I'll vote for it either way, but I just feel like that's an extra step that we don't need to put them through. Thank you.
I feel the same way. I feel that we don't need to add barriers to the project success. So if anyone would like to make a motion, and especially for approval, I'd be glad to call the vote. Or
I can make one. So for case SPP-24-6, the Highland Park Estates Major Subdivision Phase 5, I recommend approval or move approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat and road width waiver request of 24 feet based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department Stormwater Program following conditions. 1, the developer submits a written commitment to the planning and legal department stating the timeline for completing improvements within phases 2, 3, 4, and 5 and requesting acceptance into the county road inventory. 1A, the developer and/or HOA commits to petitioning to the Traffic Commission for a no parking sign on one side of Denise, Cheryl, or Emma Drive as part of the request, as part of the request for acceptance into the county inventory. And 1B, change the street cross section on plans to show a 24-foot wide road design standard to match the construction plans.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would it be possible to add that the commitments be submitted prior to final plating?
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
I accept that as the seconder.
Wonderful.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve SPP 24-5 Highland Park Estates Major Subdivision Phase 5 Preliminary Plat. This is the final hearing, and I am going to just restate the conditions with that friendly amendment and possibly one change. So with the following conditions: 1, the developer submits a written commitment to the planning and legal departments stating the timeline for completing improvements within phases 2, 3, 4, and 5, and requesting acceptance into the county inventory. And 1A, the developer and/or HOA commits to petitioning to Traffic Commission for a no parking sign on the one side of Denise, Cheryl, and Emma Drive as part of the request for acceptance into the county inventory. As part of the written commitment, we are requiring those be submitted before final platting of Phase 5 Highland Park Estates. And then a friendly amendment, just changing B to 2, since this is a preliminary plat change, just requiring as a condition, change the street cross section on the plans to show a 24-foot wide road design standard to match the construction plans. Okay, all right, I will call the roll. A vote yes is a vote to approve with the conditions as stated. David Henry,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
David Bush,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Henry Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Rudy Fields.
Yes.
Motion is approved 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Okay, we're moving on now to new business. Our first item under new business is SSS-24-1, and this is a Murray Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat Street Tree Waiver Request concerning one parcel on 12.25 plus or minus acres in Washington Township, Section 22 at 165 West Burma Road. And Ms. Crecelius, we look forward to your presentation.
Great. So as you stated, this is a 2-lot sliding scale subdivision with a street tree waiver request. The property is in Washington Township. On screen is the location map giving you a general location of the property. It is 12.22 acres and it's currently zoned agricultural residential 2.5 or AGR. Most of the surrounding properties are also AGR or residential 1, acronym RES. On screen is a site conditions map to just start getting you familiar. We're looking at a kind of a ridge line with most of the property being on slopes under 25% with access off of West Burma Road. On screen is a pictometry photo from 2025 for some context. So it's developed with a single family residential home currently. So they're proposing to split the property into 2 lots, so creating one new additional lot under the sliding scale process. To zoom in a little bit, we are looking at the creation of a new Lot 1, which would be considered the parent parcel. It would be 8.93 acres with 4.6 acres buildable. Lot 2 would contain the existing home that's already been developed. The whole lot would be 3.29 acres with about 2 acres of buildable. Both of the proposed lots have received all the permits necessary, so they've got their wastewater permit for the existing septic and a proposed septic that's shown on the plat. They've received a right-of-way permit through the highway department, and they will be sharing the existing driveway entrance with a platted easement to Lot 1 through Lot 2. There are no unique environmental features. The highway department did not require any drainage easements on this property. And the use of the new proposed Lot 1 would of course be single family residential in this zoning district or any agricultural uses. At the Plan Commission administrative meeting, there was a request for staff to work with the petitioner to come up with a tree preservation area, to mediate some of the effects of the maybe possible lack of street trees for the street tree waiver. On screen is an updated plat received today that I've highlighted the proposed tree preservation areas. So they're proposing 2 different areas of the property, and those trees would have to remain. So to go over a little bit about the waiver, the county development ordinance requires that street trees be preserved whether they're existing or proposed. So those would be trees located within 20 feet of the right-of-way. Since this property has clear frontage with no vegetation, they were required to plant 1 tree per 35 linear feet of road frontage. They provided findings of fact to support their waiver request, and staff does agree with them. We'll go over that in just a moment. So on screen is a photo of the petition property. In this photo, I'd like to point out the very large overhead aerial lines that does follow the property boundary. That is the road frontage, which would be one of the factors that limits the planting of street trees. So on screen is a photo of the existing home. This would be roughly the area between the 2 lots, 1 and 2. And then this would be kind of that western ridge line of proposed lot 1. So this is looking east at I-69 and West Burma Road. And this, you can kind of see the shared entrance that they would both utilize off of West Burma. So on screen, the petitioner's representative, Mr. Decker with Decker Land Surveying, has pointed out a few of the issues, one of which is the overhead power line that runs along that right-of-way of West Burma. We do believe that practical difficulties have been established with the waiver of findings of the waiver. So staff recommends approving the sliding scale subdivision preliminary plat and approving the street tree waiver due to the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department reports and the Monroe County Drainage Board approval pending to be heard on April 8th, 2025. And I failed to mention that the plat committee did hear this on February 20th of this year, and they did forward a positive recommendation. Does anybody have any questions?
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? No? No. Okay. With that being said, Mr. Deckard, I assume you're representing Mr. Farmer today? If you would kindly sign in, it'd help us keep things straight.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Can we go back to the picture of the plat that was showing the tree preservation areas? Point out one quick thing. So we're agreeable to, placing a tree preservation on this area here to preserve at least 20 trees. That's what is going to be required for street trees along Burma Road. The 2 areas highlighted, just a little bit of a misinterpretation here that we're only proposing 1 tree preservation area. It is going to be between lots 1 and 2. We sent this kind of last minute into staff, so understandable. But we do have the area in between lots 1 and 2 delineated as the tree preservation and not the north one. The hatchet area that you're seeing there is actually the 25% slope. So those are areas greater than 25% slope. Questions that staff may have, be glad to try to answer any questions that you have.
With the 25% slope, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump the gun here, but with the 25% slope, you have is there intention to remove those trees, or is it just a complication of the commitment to preservation?
No, we felt that that was a good place to put the tree preservation. This is going to be not only protecting the slopes, but also protecting any future erosion in this case.
But in the north one?
In the north one, like I said, there was only 20 trees that was going to be required, and we believe that the area that we have delineated between lots 1 and 2 there's more than ample trees in that area to account for 20 trees to be preserved.
Okay, I'm sorry I jumped the gun. Now, do my colleagues here have questions for the petitioner? No? Okay.
Just one quick question or comment to staff. It would be nice that if future petitioners may have the ability to have an alternative in a case like this, that we have trees that we would like to preserve, that we would have an alternative place to preserve them when we run into a situation that trees lay in, or a power line in this case, or maybe where we can't plant trees. So just a friendly
It's a good suggestion.
possible amendment in the future.
Thank you for making the suggestion. Thank you. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? So come to the podium, raise your virtual hand. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the podium or raise your virtual hand. We see no one. Okay, so we come back to, I have one question. Is a waiver of final hearing being requested?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I come back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. I know it's a little tricky to throw out a motion, you know, especially, but I think that, to me, this particular one just seems to make common sense. You know, you don't want to put trees underneath the power line and create problems down the road. And it sounds like they found a great solution from my perspective. So if anybody would like to make a motion.
I can again.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Morris.
For case SSS-24-1, I move approval of the sliding scale subdivision preliminary plat and approving the street tree waiver due to the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department reports and the Monroe County Drainage Board approval on April 8th, 2025. And also move approval of the waiver of final hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded to approve SSS-24-1, which is the Murray Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat Street Tree Waiver, as well as the request to waive the final hearing with the condition as stated in the staff report. A vote yes is a vote to approve. Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
Yes.
David Bush?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
Trona Enright Randolph?
Yes.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Rudy Fields?
Yes.
David Henry?
Yes.
Motion is approved 8-0.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, we're on to item number 2 under new business, and this is a rezone, REZ-25-1, Sunset Hill rezone from high density to residential as requested by the Commissioners of Monroe County. And this is the preliminary hearing, and a waiver of final hearing has been requested concerning 100 parcels on 64.44 plus or minus acres in Perry Township, Section 6 at 828. Well, do I read all these addresses? Okay, so as described in the agenda and in our Monroe County Plan Commission packet, and I believe that Mr. Myers is going to expertly guide us through this. Thank you.
I actually have a question. Can these 3 petitions really kind of belong together? And I don't know if we should hear them all together.
Hey,
I don't know what my colleagues think.
Yeah, let's see if the Plan Commission would like to review REZ-25-1 and REZ, I've lost it here. Oh, REZ 25-2 and REZ 25-3 together. And that would include Sunset Hill rezone from high density to residential as requested by the commissioners. The Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone from high density to residential as requested by the commissioners. And the Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone from high density to residential as requested by the commissioners. Is there any objection to hearing these together? The intention is clear, is to kind of clean up our county development ordinance, and it is requested by the petitioner, by the commissioners, will be hearing these cases. And is there anyone with an objection to hearing these together and facilitating the expeditious movement through these properties? Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph.
It's a question more directed at, I guess, Mr. Myers. By putting these petitions together and putting slides together, that might, bring information that pertains to just one section of that petition. So if we lump it all together, is that going to kind of throw off the presentation? Like, you know, you have some pie graphs and things like that that look like they're reflective of what contains in each individual petition versus grouping them together.
It's a good question. So in my presentation, I'll cover a lot of the information that applies to both of these rezone cases. But when we get to the section of rezone properties, I'll have my colleague Sean Smith just swap the chair with me, and he'll address those specific properties with some details that he has as well. So we will work together with when we get to the end, because there are a little bit different of conditions of approval with respect to these rezones.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Henry.
I think also to add on to that, that we just be abundantly clear about the rationale for the separate petitions, right? Because one does include a reference to the historical overlay, and that there's not an overlay in all of them, right? So just to be very clear about the rationale about both of these would be really important for us. Yeah. Otherwise, I have no objection.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that? To combine
I
them?
don't think
Okay.
so.
Well, we look forward to you guiding us through these three separate petitions. They do have similarities and rationales, and we look forward to hearing about it from you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will go over the Sunset Hill section first. The Monroe County Board of Commissioners are requesting to rezone approximately 100 parcels in this neighborhood from high development residential to residential 1. The rationale provided by the commissioners relates to the selected area exhibiting an established neighborhood with the majority of homes utilizing septic systems, the presence of karst and sinkhole features in the area, as well as the inability to connect to sewer throughout this neighborhood. All of that information that I just mentioned also applies to the Maple Grove baby farms that Sean will touch on as well. The uniqueness of the Sunset Hill neighborhood specifically is also as part of the rationale by the commissioners is the most recent approved historic preservation overlay that was granted to 25 parcels of the Sunset Hill subject area. All right, so let's see here. Staff has sent out approximately 85 property notice letters and 170 neighbor notice letters for the Sunset Hill specific rezone. There's a large number of notice letters and neighbor notice letters as well that was sent out by staff for the Maple Groves baby farm as well. And this request was made following the adoption of the county development ordinance that was adopted on December 18th, 2024. Following that adoption, the commissioners requested that this rezone be reviewed by staff and the Plan Commission, and that request was reinstated at the March 13th, 2025 County Commissioners work session. So on the screen, you will see the outline of the subject area with respect to the Sunset Hill districts. And you'll see all of those properties in yellow are designated as high development residential. Those are the properties that are involved in this section of the rezone for Sunset Hill. Only the ones that you see that are highlighted in high development residential. This is the former zoning map. So you'll see that some of them are outlined in red. Those were some of the parcels that received the historic preservation overlay. A few of them on the screen is showing 28 parcels specifically, but several of them, 3 total, were actually removed. And this map does not reflect those ones that were removed. But I included this map because it does provide a history of where we were with respect to zoning with the prior 1997 zoning ordinance, showing the mix of zones that were throughout this subdivision, this neighborhood in particular. I will take a moment to, with that zoning map, to identify that this property is part of the former fringe area that was under the city's planning and zoning jurisdiction, the city of Bloomington that is, until the interlocal agreement ended in 2011. According to the interlocal, the county was to adopt the zoning in place for those areas as of 1997. When we adopted our prior ordinance with Chapter 833 to accommodate and match that fringe zoning districts. The 1997 zoning districts was that they were in place up until the CDO was adopted. And the new map of this area showing the rezoning of the high development residential HD is now shown on the screen. The hatching properties that you see are the ones that were granted the historic preservation overlay through the recommendation of the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review, the review of this Plan Commission, as well as the County Board of Commissioners. Over time, the area has relied on different zoning designations, and there has been at least one multifamily development within the Sunset Hill area. There are several multifamily development lots that are in the Maple Groves Baby Farm section, and I'll have Sean touch on those when the time comes. So specifically with respect to this Sunset Hill, there is one property in particular, one parcel that contains multiple homes, and that is 717 South Anna Lee Lane through 725 South Anna Lee Lane. And I'll touch on us as planning staff requesting that that one particularly be removed from the request to the residential 1 district because it's already operating as a multi-family property. A bit of background and discussion. With the changing in the zoning, we will see a change in some of the design standards for these lots. So the proposed rezone from HD to residential raises the minimum lot size from 0.14 acres to 1 acre and raises the minimum lot width from 50 feet to 75 feet. The proposed rezone from high development residential to residential is also impacting the side yard and rear yard setbacks. Side yard setbacks are going from 5 feet to 10 feet, and the rear yard is going from 10 feet to 20 feet. The accessory buildings less than 15 feet in height can have a reduced setback of 5 feet in all zones. If a property in the residential district has less than 1 acre minimum, but is meeting all other design standards, in other words, the setbacks, then it can be still be developed without the need of a variance. The county development ordinance allows for property in the RES zone to have less than 1 acre minimum lot size if the property abides by those setbacks. If you do not meet setbacks, then the variance for those setbacks will be required. I do not believe a minimum lot size variance is required. It's just going to be noticing the setback variances specifically for those lots. So in other words, a variance is only activated when a new construction / development is occurring on the property, thereby requiring a permit review. Otherwise, a property non-compliant with lot size is considered what's called pre-existing non-conforming and is able to remain as such until a new structure is built or an existing structure is expanded, altered, or changed. And all of that information just described applies also to the Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone as well. On the district character of both the residential district as well as the high development district, this is included in the staff packet. I'm not going to read directly from the screen here, but it does give you some background of the character as well as the purpose of each of these zoning districts to get you more familiar with the zones. Now on the screen is the design standards for the HD zone and the residential or RES zone. So it's highlighting some of those differences there in yellow that I've already just described, including the minimum lot width changing, the minimum lot size changing, but with that caveat that's noted in footnote 11 for the residential zone. Maximum impervious cover is also changing, as well as the minimum buildable area for lots not on sewer. Those are within the subdivision standards. Minimum buildable area for lots on sewer. You can see those changes there. And then, of course, the side yard setbacks, as well as a rear yard. Rear yard's not highlighted, but that is a difference. Okay, so also with changing of zoning, you have to look at the permitted uses or conditional uses within each of those zones. So within the high development residential, we have 28 permitted uses and 7 conditional uses. In the residential 1 district, we have 25 permitted uses, but 12 conditional uses. Highlighted on the screen are the differences that you can see between the HD zone and the RES zone. I will point out the RES zone allows for agriculture traditional, roadside stand temporary, accessory dwelling units attached and detached, as well as a residential storage structure. That specifically to describe that is a structure that is for residential storage, but there is no primary residence on the property. So we have its own unique definition for that type of use. Conditional uses in the RES 1 zone, 2 family dwellings are allowed, child care center. These are all conditional uses that go through the zoning appeals. I'll continue. Collection container facility, artisan crafts, food and or beverage production, cafe/coffee shop. And then if we look back to the HD zone, some differences there. 2 family dwelling is just already permitted, as is child care center. And then you'll see multifamily dwellings, 3 to 4 units, as well as multifamily dwelling 5+ units is in the permitted use section. Senior housing and single family attached dwelling units that are 3 to 5 units. And then finally, conditional uses within the HD zone, firearm sales and retail sales and retail sales small scale, Anywhere on this screen that you see an asterisk next to that use, it means that there are specific standards outlined in the ordinance that also need to be met in order for that use to proceed. So now on the screen, specifically a diagram that shows all of the parcels impacted for the Sunset Hill section. We can come back to this if we need to review. Comprehensive plan. This specifically on this slide and the next slide is going to touch on the Sunset Hill section, but both of these rezones with the Sunset Hill and Maple Grove Baby Farms, they are both under the same comprehensive plan designation. So this information can apply to that one as well. So in phase 1 of the Monroe County urbanizing area, it's designated as mixed residential, which are defined as accommodating a wide array of both single family and attached housing types, integrated into a cohesive neighborhood that may also include neighborhood commercial uses, such as a local amenity. So on the screen, you can see the comprehensive plan map that indicated that mixed residential use, as well as figure 1 on the right side of the screen that shows just the same information essentially that I just described, but just pulled right from the MCUA mixed residential section. And for those of members of the public or Planning Commission members that need a refresher on the comprehensive plan, it is a guiding force, if you will, that was trying to provide some guidance on how the county wanted certain areas to develop. So a lot of this information was utilized in the creation of the county development ordinance. So you might see that some of this information reflects why we went with originally the high development residential district when we rezoned it from the 1997 ordinance to the county development ordinance. Phase 2 of that MCUA comprehensive plan, Monroe County urbanizing area. So on the right side of the screen, you see figure 2 that just shows that the same area that I've described. If you're curious to know the location of the Maple Grove Baby Farms, if you're looking at that diagram, the colored property immediately to the north across, I believe that's 3rd Street, is the Maple Grove Baby Farms section. So they're just right across from each other. They're just not both identified with the star on this diagram. So phase 2 indicates N1 urban infill neighborhood. This district includes areas known as the former fringe and area intended for annexation by the city of Bloomington. As I stated previously with respect to the former fringe areas, the district is intended to promote compact mixed residential infill development as described in the mixed residential land use type designated in the urbanizing area plan. Commercial mixed use development may be appropriate along primary streets at the edges of these neighborhoods. New development should be compatible with surrounding development within the city of Bloomington. Examples of expected development include single family, 2-family, attached townhome, multifamily, commercial, mixed use office, and civic institutional building. So that concludes the discussion with the comprehensive plan. And again, as I stated, that was the more or less the guiding force that came with the development of the county development ordinance. On the screen now is a bit of the discussion regarding nonconformity. So again, when we rezone these properties from the 1997 ordinance to the HD and from the HD to the residential 1, we always have to talk about pre-existing nonconforming because that's what is being caused when you do a rezone like this. So basically, if certain design standards in the new zone can't be met, you're considered pre-existing nonconforming. That is when we look at the necessity for variances if there are any changes being made to the property. And of course, through that variance process, as findings of fact that are presented to the Board of Zoning Appeals, this would be a major discussion point stating that it was recently rezoned, and that could be a reason why that variance is needed. So the board would have that information at hand to make a final determination on whether or not to grant a variance for whatever is happening on the property with respect to design standards. I believe I remember actually at the admin meeting, some Plan Commission members were interested in some sort of analysis of how many lots specifically were going to be considered pre-existing non-conforming after this rezone. And that would prove to be quite a challenging task with the information that we have and the data that it's available to us. Basically, using Beacon GIS that we have, all of those parcel lines on that map, they are not representative of a survey. So it would be very tough for staff to assess each lot individually to measure setbacks, because we could easily mismeasure them because that parcel line information is not 100% accurate. So we would, that resulting analysis, although time consuming, would provide some reference point for you. But then again, we could say that 50% of the lots or more are pre-existing non-conforming and would need a variance. But then again, we don't have that survey data available, so we couldn't confidently say in our result of the analysis. Okay, so I'll keep going on. We did receive some letters of support. So these came in after the packet was published. They're on the screen, and I can hand out physical copies as well to the Plan Commission if you would like. There are some hard copies for members of the public over there as well, and I've got some more if people want to distribute those. But the only two letters of support that I received for the Sunset Hill section is on the screen, and they're fairly brief, so you may be able to read them from where you're sitting.
Actually, Lisa Fitzgerald is in the Baby Farms area.
Okay, gotcha. Yes, we will. Yeah. So them being discussed together, we can just incorporate that one into that one specifically. I will move on now to the letter of opposition. We did receive one letter of opposition that came in after the packet was published. So on the screen now is a letter from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce that references both rezones, the Sunset Hill rezone and the Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone. I do have physical copies of this as well if you need a physical copy to read it. We do have some copies over there on the table for members of the public as well. I will also note that I believe Mr. Smith has a few other letters in his possession for the Maple Grove Baby Farms, so we will pull those slides up when the time comes for me to switch over to him. Okay, so that brings me to staff's recommendation specifically for the Sunset Hill section. Staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan and the following consideration by the Plan Commission and County Commissioners. And that is stated to avoid creating nonconformity consideration should be given to the zoning of the following pre-existing multifamily development, and that is that property that I've mentioned at 717 South Anna Lee Lane through through 725 South Anna Lee Lane. And that is shown on the image on the screen. That long rectangular parcel has multiple single-family residences on one lot of record. So staff is recommending that that one not be part of the HD rezone to residential 1. So that concludes an overview of both of the rezones. I will now switch to Mr. Smith to cover some of the particulars for the Maple Grove Baby Farm.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. That was an exceptional presentation. You really synthesized it for us. And I know Mr. Smith will as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. You really summed it up for me, so. Okay, so this is REZ-25-2 and 3. So this is concerning the Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone area. Drew kind of went through a lot of this, but for this rezone in particular, I just wanted to state that planning staff for this particular petition did send out approximately 99 property owner notice letters and approximately 142 neighbor notice letters for this rezone on January 31st, 2025. So everyone in the area should be at least somewhat familiar with the rezone before you. And I also did just want to point out that access to this site is from each of the main intersecting streets, so that being Fairfield, Kimball, and Johnson, which all derive access from West 3rd Street. And then this is an aerial image of Maple Grove Baby Farms rezone. So all of the areas on the right side of the screen that have that kind of yellow color with the HD, those are all properties that are subject to this rezone request. Drew summed up a great summary of the differences between the HG and RES zones, so I will go ahead and go through this. For this area in particular, there are approximately 132 parcels, 108 of them, or 82%, are less than an acre, and then the remainder, 18%, or 24 parcels, are greater than 1 acre. Again, Drew did a fantastic presentation on all of the differences between the zones. For this area in particular, Maple Grove Baby Farms, it does have partial utilities connected to specific properties in this neighborhood, but not all properties have access to the city sewer service. On the right-hand side of the screen where you see the blue area, that indicates that most of the area is in the Clear Creek watershed, critical watershed area. And Erica Penna, the stormwater manager, did make note of that, but otherwise no other comments at this time from Highway. Again, Drew summed this up really well. Comprehensive plan discussion. The types of nonconformities. I did add, just as an example to this one in particular, so the multifamily development at 101 South Fairfield Drive was issued a building permit for 43 units in 2014. This would exceed the standards set forth in the HD zoning, so even if they were to be rezoned from HD to RES, or if they weren't rezoned to RES, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are currently conforming. I did just want to point out that multifamily developments of more than 30 units on a lot are not just permitted outright. They do have to go to Plan Commission to receive approval for that. So just wanted to make that example known. And then moving forward, I did receive some letters of remonstrance. Drew did point out one that was from the Greater Chamber of Bloomington. And then I do also have one on the screen that's also included in the staff packet So I won't spend too much on that one since that is in the packet. But the one on your screen is in particular to the 101 South Fairfield Drive property, which is that multifamily development. They did include some exhibits that they wanted to share. So it looks like they included some photos of the development. They have a zoning map. And then to the right, I believe, is the current status of utilities. So like sewer coverage. So as I stated previously, there was sewer in the area, but it's not servicing every single property. It's only servicing very specific properties like shown on the right-hand side of the screen. And then this is one letter of remonstrance that I did receive, and I do have copies. There are paper copies on the white table over there, and then I do have individual copies for the Plan Commission. And I will leave this on the screen for just a little bit since that was not included in the packet.
Thank you.
And I do have a letter of support that I will also be passing around. And again, since this was received after the packet went out, I'll leave it on the screen for just a brief moment, and then I do have copies for the Plan Commission.
Thank you.
Then this will lead us into staff's recommendation. So staff does recommend forwarding a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan with the following consideration by the Plan Commission and County Commissioners, and that is to avoid creating nonconformities. Consideration should be given to the zoning of the following pre-existing multifamily developments, and those include 101 South Fairfield Drive, 2542 West Evergreen Drive, 415 North Kimball Drive, 215 North Johnson Avenue, 325 North Johnson Avenue, and 2312 West Beaumont Lane, and then 120 South Kimball Drive. And this could be considered by the Plan Commission and County Commissioners to exclude those parcels from this petition.
Thank you so much. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Or shall we go to the petitioner, which in this case is Commissioner Julie Thomas. She's one of the commissioners. So Mr. Enright Randolph, you have a question?
Yeah, and this is going back to Mr. Myers' presentation, and you mentioned that you weren't certain if they would have to seek a variance for minimum lot size required, or for a variance not to have the minimum lot size requirement. Now, you might have just said, I'm pretty certain they don't have to, but I need to know definitively if they don't meet the minimum lot size, is that a variance process?
No, so for the residential zone under the CDO, it does have a 2-pager, which has the footnote under the acreage, which says that if all other development standards are met, the acreage can proceed if less than 1. But I think what Drew is probably referring to is that we may not know if a side setback is met.
Right, and so if it's not met, then they may have to seek a minimum lot size variance?
No, so the way that it's been described is that if, once they get the side setback, then they comply with all development standards.
Well, let's say their house is in there. They'd have to move their
Right.
house, or they would have to seek
A variance to the setback.
to the setback, but not the lot size.
Correct.
The way that it's written.
It gets tricky.
It did.
Yeah, the way that it's written in the ordinance is if a property does not meet the minimum lot size and you don't meet a certain design standard, then you're triggered to meet that design standard and go through the variance process. But as soon as the setback variance or whatever other variance is approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, it immediately makes the minimum lot size variance moot. So you wouldn't need that anymore. So we wouldn't make them apply for two variances when, as soon as one is approved, the other one is immediately not important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I just really want to be certain on some of the nuances here. Go ahead. I just had a couple other questions.
Go ahead and try and go ahead.
I'm fine with some of my other concerns are impervious surface cover. So that's pretty extreme in the two different designations. One, if we move forward with the rezone, you get 50% of a lot size or 70%, whichever is less. But since we're in a critical watershed, it's actually 10% of the lot size or 4,500 square feet, whichever is less. So we're talking about folks probably being out of compliance with just impervious surface. And little hypothetical of what could happen is if they just want to put a shed in their backyard, they're going to have to seek a variance for that if they're already above the minimum, or the maximum impervious cover, right? That would be correct, right?
If they're converting any green space to impervious and they're over the already maximum for the site, they would need a variance.
And then one other question, and I think this is my last one because I think I'm getting my point across. Without having sewer, you need a minimum acre, correct?
That's for the subdivision standards. So that part of the table is just for subdividing.
They subdivide? So if
If they
there's no
subdivide.
lot there at all, or no building or home, and it's a vacant lot, and they can't hook up to sewer,
If it's a legal lot of record, we would not hold them to the 1 acre of buildable area without, it would have to be a subdivision that would require
okay.
that.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And I'll just note that in the overlay or zone it's currently, the maximum impervious cover is 60% of the lot, which I think provides a lot of flexibility for a bunch of lots that we're looking at. The minimum lot size is 0.14 acres, and I had to do a calculation, and 0.14 acres in square feet is 6,098. So square feet. So I just think a lot of these homes are going to be hitting that impervious surface maximum.
Just to also confirm, though, I think you compared the impervious cover for a critical watershed to the impervious cover not in a critical watershed. So those are two different standards for two different zones. So if you were comparing res impervious cover within a critical watershed, it is 10% or 4,500 square feet, whichever is less. And then in HD, it would be 50%, not 60%.
Right, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to focus on the critical watershed, which just adds another level of burden onto property owners.
And part of that CDO prioritization list that we mentioned in the beginning, we are working with the Drainage Board to update those numbers because we have seen quite a few property owners come to us with concerns on these numbers.
Totally understand that. There's a lot of other things that restrain the property to eliminate kind of buildable area.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Henry?
Thank you, Madam President. Following some of the surveyor's questions on the parcel size, I understand the recommendation for Anna Drive and the Sunset Hills because we know that that's a multi-use, or I'm sorry, multi-residential. So for a lot of the parcels are under an acre. I think we covered that. A lot of the parcels are half an acre. And I'm kind of curious about the setback question. So I just want to be sure I'm clear about this. If we move to it, we're moving from a setback of 5 to 10 feet. Is that correct? Or is it the other way?
If we move to this, it would be, currently it's 5 feet side setback, and it would become a 10-foot side setback.
So if someone wanted to put a bump out on a side of one of these small homes, like we run the risk of them hitting the setback, like a small addition to the property.
It's possible, yes, by survey, they may see that they're within the 5 to 10-foot range. The process for that would be to get a variance.
Of course, I'm going to presume a lot of the homes in the space are homes that, because of the size of the parcels, these are not large homes or homes that are, let's say, over $200,000 or $250,000 in the community. I'm going to presume that a lot of the current parcel owners may be not be able to afford some of the challenges if they have to go through variance on anything in the space. I guess it's hard to get at that data tonight, but I have some concerns about what happens next if someone wants to add on to these homes or to make some sort of improvement that becomes really onerous for them to add on space. I guess when we make the comment that we can't really get at the number of how many are non-conforming, no one for sure in the Sunset Hills is not, but there's others that could be or mostly are. I mean, do we have a ballpark? Is it 70 of these units that are non-conforming? Can we take a rough order of magnitude? How many are going to get knocked into non-conforming?
So the parcel size is just our best guess at nonconformities. The issue with analyzing it for the GIS records that we have is that we're going off of data that's not perfectly correct. So if we were to say this house is within 3 feet of the side setback or within 3 feet of the property line, it may actually be 10 feet because GIS is a 2D dimensional line drawing on a 3D object. So it's just, it proves difficult when we don't have good survey data in this area to tell what the true setbacks are of any of these homes.
My last kind of question for staff before we get to petitioners. So right now, if and these have been set aside for higher development for a while, there is by right use, right? If someone wanted to split a property into a 2-family unit, that's currently by right and it would be conditional if we move to the res. Is that correct?
Actually, I want to go back to your question for 1 second about the nonconformity. We could evaluate this based on impervious cover alone if you would like. We did not do that. So that is another way of evaluating nonconformities. But your question about uses, so in the staff packet, I believe they did highlight the different uses that were permitted. So if you are looking for, you said residential multifamily?
Right.
It's not permitted in the res zone. So in the HD zone, we have multifamily dwelling 3 to 4 unit and multifamily dwelling 5+ unit as permitted uses. And then when you go up to the residential 1, those uses are not listed.
And the amount of time that has passed where that is a by right use has been 30 years? Or how long has this been? I mean, I guess there's the comp plan of 12, and then there's AFA. How long have these parcels been set aside for this use that could without the conditions? It's been some time. Is that fair to say? It's been some time. Okay, thank you, Madam President.
Also, I'll add to that. It also depends on the prior zoning of those lots as well, because we had such a mixed zoning in this area. That we had RM15, RS 3.5 / Pro 6, all of those. The application of multifamily kind of differs a little bit here and there as you move through those multiple different zones that were part of the 1997 ordinance and the fringe.
Yeah, I appreciate the cleanliness of the new CDO that clarifies that, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, we move to the petitioner, which excuse me. Oh, yes.
So during maybe a staff review, and let's say we're getting kind of concerned of a potential setback issue, that would then trigger what, a certified plot plan, a survey?
If our best available data, which is Beacon GIS, shows that there's a setback concern, then they can get a survey or they could apply for the variance with the data that we have. But they're ultimately responsible for knowing where their property lines are located. So let's say they want to do an extension that would encroach 2 feet into the 10-foot side setback. They could get a survey and prove they have that space, or they can apply for a variance.
They can also measure, they can also go out and measure themselves if they know where their property lines are.
So my question is, it's not required for them to produce a certified plot plan or a survey if it starts getting questionable of if they meet the setback or not?
It depends. If they're going to be encroaching up to, let's say they want to propose like a 0-foot setback and they're potentially going to be on another person's property, we would require a survey.
So I know there's some discretionary measures, and I'm so sorry I have to ask questions I know the answer to. But my point is that's another cost added to these properties just in case they encroach on a setback. And then if that's the case, they then have to go through a variance. So we're just really compounding all of these costs and burdens, which I still don't understand the complete goal here. I've read some things that have been provided recently of what the goal is here, except for the overall rezone. That's it for my questions. Maybe the petitioner can explain that to me.
Let's hear from the petitioner. Commissioner Thomas, if you'd be so kind as to present to us your goals with this rezone, with these rezones, we'd be most grateful.
Sure. Thank you so much. Julie Thomas, I'm president of Monroe County Board of Commissioners. I'm here presenting on behalf of the board. I will be very brief. So these two areas, as noted, are formerly part of the AFA agreement areas intended for annexation between the city and the county, which lapsed more than a decade ago. Part of the AFA agreement placed those portions of the county that were targeted for annexation under city zoning. And for those of you who've been around the Plan Commission long enough, you know that we've had to learn someone else's zoning to manage county properties. And this went on for a number of years. RS Pro 3.5/6, whatever. But and ironically, it's not even a system that the city uses anymore anyway. So with our CDO, we finally fixed, corrected that issue. So as we worked through the proposed zoning map changes over the last year or so, we addressed a number of these zoning anomalies elsewhere in the county. What occurred was that the city zone was automatically transferred to its nearest cousin in our new county zone, but we did go ahead and address and amend some of those things before the information went out to property owners. But there were a number of properties where we addressed this issue and kept in mind something from Indiana Code 36-7-4-603, current conditions and character of current structures and uses in each district. And once the zoning map changes went through our Plan Commission review, postcards were sent to property owners so they could provide feedback and public comment at our hearings in 2024. However, property owners in these two areas alerted us to the fact that we had unfortunately overlooked these rezone areas. And for that, I personally apologize as the member of the Plan Commission from the Board of Commissioners. But that automatic change from a city zone to a denser county zone was inappropriate elsewhere and was addressed. So to correct this particular error in these two areas, we did not think it was appropriate to suggest an amendment at the end of the CDO process. Instead, county legal advised that the process we are pursuing now, which is requesting a petition, is the best way to ensure property owners have been alerted and have an opportunity to offer comment at a public hearing. The same opportunity that was provided during the CDO hearing process for all the other land property owners on zonings. As we hear public comment, I will be especially interested in hearing from those property owners in the area rather than those who may have a desire for a particular zone but do not actually own property in those areas. And just so everyone knows, for those who could not be here tonight, there will be at least one more opportunity to offer public comment via email or attending a hearing with the Board of Commissioners once we have this petition forwarded to us with either a negative or a positive or no recommendation. Now, again, most of these properties are on septic, requiring larger lot sizes. And again, there is a historic overlay on a portion of Sunset Acres as well. This is not vacant land. People live here. If this rezone is passed in whatever form, yes, property owners can petition for a rezone. They may petition for a variance, but that's only if, and I really want to make sure people understand that what the surveyor was talking about is if somebody is making changes to the property. You don't have to get a variance if things remain as they are on the property. And right now, someone could purchase property in either of these locations and build some fairly high density dwellings, and the neighbors would have no recourse. With this, they would at least be alerted so that if somebody is requesting a rezone to a higher density building, that they would be alerted, because it's not the norm. It's not the norm in these areas right now. And it's not the predominant zoning really here if you look at the character and characteristics of this area. And this would give them a say. For my colleagues here, I know this is strange because the commissioners don't normally petition the Plan Commission for a hearing on something. But I hope you will look at this as a continuation of the CDO process. This is much like what we did in 2024, but it is carrying through with this last bit that we overlooked. And again, massive apologies for that. So it's strange to have the commissioners offer this petition, but it's also not everyday business that we go through a CDO process. Last Thursday, again, the Board of Commissioners unanimously voted to proceed with this petition in recognition of the fact that the initial request had lapsed after 60 days. That is a right for petitioners to be sure that they're heard, and we did do that, as Mr. Myers pointed out. None of this is perfect. We acknowledge that. There are a couple of multifamily housing units which exist, and we recognize that. And so we are asking to have removed from the petition, to amend the petition for Sunset Acres to remove 717 to 725 South Anna Lee Lane, which is 5308-06-100-034-000-008 from that petition, and leave it as the high development residential. And similarly, to remove Hadley Village Apartments, which is 101 South Fairfield, from this petition. 101 South Fairfield Drive, which is 5305-31-301-082.000-04. But we recognize there are a number of these small mobile home parks in the Maple Grove Baby Farm area. They are not high density development. They are not residential one. They actually, under our CDO, should be PUDs to ensure that there are storm shelters and other things provided. I don't know what we do with that. I think no matter what, and as noted, even the 101 South Fairfield would still be non-conforming. a lot of the small vacant lots in the Baby Farm subdivision are same owner as the house that is on the small lot next door. And so I think we have to recognize how this property is used, and there is quite a bit of agricultural use. I can appreciate the interest in nonconforming, yes or no. I've been a nonconformist all of my life, and I will tell you that I lived in a nonconforming lot for 30 years. We added onto our house, we built a garage, and the only thing I had to take to the BZA was the garage because it's very close to the roadway because of slopes. So it's not the end of the world to be nonconforming. And again, we're already in nonconformance here anyway. So with that, I really appreciate the Plan Commission for hearing this, and I appreciate the people who've come out to speak on this, and again, privileging those who live and own property in these areas. And thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. I'd like to open this up now to members of the public who are in favor of this petition. If you are in favor of this petition, please come to the podium and sign in. And that being in favor of this is changing it from high density down to residential. So Ms. Brackney, if you would kindly, and Ms. Brinegar, if you would kindly come up to the podium and.
We also have one person online.
Okay, and sign in, Ms. Brinegar. It's good to see you here. Thank you. I'm gonna,
Mic down. Yeah. I can get it. I can get it. It's more than a pound.
You think I'm short?
No. The mic is short.
Oh dear, I've been there all my life. Yeah. No, I accept this. I think this is very good to go down. We have a little quiet neighborhood. I'd like to keep it that way.
and how long have you lived there?
Well, my parents, I lived there as a child, and I got married and I moved away. But we kept the house in the family, and it was a rental, and then I moved back in it myself.
It's nice.
So I've lived there now since 2016. But my parents bought it in 1950.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Welcome.
And I think Ms. Brackney, if you would kindly sign in and then state your name, and then you'll have 3 minutes if you want them all.
Hi there. My name is Susan Brackney. I am a resident in Sunset Hill. I'm a property owner there. I support this rezone. It's more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, it's environmentally sensitive and historically significant. You can think of it as a Depression-era working class village. Its residents worked in nearby quarries, in many of Monroe County's now defunct factories, and additionally, its properties were originally set up to accommodate supplemental or incidental farming and livestock. So multiple homes in the area are part of a historic preservation overlay, and still other homes in the area are included as contributing in the Indiana Historic Sites and Structures Inventory database. Besides the age and architectural styles of all those little houses, there's a vernacular landscape that must be considered as a site as a whole. It's the relation in this site as a whole consists of the way the houses are positioned on the lots, the fact that the lots are comparatively large and there's sort of a back 40 for each home, This was neither accidental nor coincidental. It is an intended relationship, which enabled Sunset Hills' original working class residents, as well, frankly, as many of its current ones, to farm, incidentally or supplementally. And also worth noting is that in early September, I completed a request for determination of eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places and the Indiana Register of Historic Sites and Structures. And on September 11th, the Assistant Director of Preservation Services with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, long title, Division of Preservation and Archaeology, he contacted me to say, we believe the district meets the criteria for inclusion in the state and national registers. That doesn't mean we're in, it just means I get to do a lot more work. So I'm planning on going ahead and applying. And it's a very special place. I just really have to say, I really think this is the right move. To maintain the character of the place, because once it's gone, it's gone. And someday, if you preserve it, you might be really glad you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brackney. I see, do you mind if I go to one hand that's raised online? I think it's Lisa, if she could be unmuted. And I don't know if it's Lisa Fitzgerald.
Lisa Pay?
It's Lisa Pay.
Oh, hi, Lisa Pay.
Hi.
Yes.
I am a resident as well. I have lived at 512 South Anna Lee Lane since 1989. As Susan has stated, it's a unique and magnificent area that would just be destroyed by high density. I mean, we have plenty of apartments for all the kiddies and anybody else. It'd be amazing if we could just stay as we are in our own little slice of heaven.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Pay. Thank you. I'm
Absolutely.
going to turn back to the room here, and if you would kindly come forward to the microphone and sign in, and we'd like to hear from you.
Good evening, Commissioner. I represent TRG Living, who owns a manufactured home community there on Johnson. I'm not really speaking for or against the ordinance change, the zoning change. I have a couple of clarifying questions I need answered. I hear you guys saying that people will be grandfathered in, the zone, you know, but you don't describe or define the description of property improvement. When TRG bought this community, it needed a lot of work, and we've invested a lot of money, and we have a lot of work to go. Is that considered improvement? I have vacant lots that we intend to put newer homes on. Is that going to trigger extra work or extra financial burden on TRG as we improve these parcels?
I will, do you mind answering the question? We normally don't take questions during this time period, but Ms. Nestor-Jelen, if you would kindly.
Sure, I can briefly summarize, but I think we may want to connect because it is going to be very specific just to this property. I believe there's only one manufactured home park in these two rezones, but basically, if you've had a licensed mobile home park with the state and you have a certain number of pads or lots and you want to change those homes out, we would not require you to change the zoning in order to do that. There is some state code that allows you to continue with that use, but we will just make sure that things like, you know, floodplain or other considerations are being met but I don't think that there's any floodplain here. So I'd be happy to talk to you about what other improvements you might be interested in, specifically exterior to the site or exterior to any of the homes, such as like fencing or decks or things like that. That does tend to get a little bit tricky. So
Thank you.
And if you would kindly then contact the planning department, especially before the commissioners meet to vote on this, because it may sway how you feel depending upon what you find out after coordinating with our staff. So
Understood.
thank you for
Thank you.
raising these questions. Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Yes, Mr. Stewart, yes. Would kindly sign in.
Good evening. I'm Roger Stewart. Live there anymore, but I did at one time. And it was a nice, when I lived there, everybody worked, two parents. You see cows on one side of the street, horses on the other, people farming or gardening and what have you, kids playing basketball, football, what have you. Times changed, but anyway, I'm just here to say I'm in favor of the downzoning. I'm just not a person that's really crazy about high density areas. I had lived on Kimball Drive at one time too, but I just think that let's leave the changes to low density and leave the homeowners alone and give the people the right to live in their neighborhood without the worry of what's going to happen in the future, such as multifamily housing. I know there's some talk about affordable housing, but when I lived there, nobody was any better than anybody else. It was simply everybody worked, they had to work. And it wasn't, I guess you could have called it affordable housing in 1949 or 1950. But what we need, the term affordable housing gets used an awful lot. If you talk to different people, it has different meanings to them. But I'd like to see the chamber get more involved with trying to get a high-paying corporate company to come to Bloomington. But I would also like to mention that when GE, RCA, Westinghouse, and Otis was out on Curry Pike and downtown on Roger Street, there was a tremendous amount of people driving from Greene County, Owen County, Lawrence County, Morgan County to work in Bloomington. So it was people living the way we did then. It wasn't changing business not coming to Bloomington. So anyway, there's an old saying, why the rich man dances, the poor man pays the band. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this downzoning? Are there anyone who have their hands raised? Okay. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this downzoning? Please come to the podium and sign in, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Got it. Got you signed in.
So, hi, sir.
I'm David Ferguson and Shane Allen, and we're here on behalf of Regency. And we did send a letter, which you've talked about, which is great. I do appreciate the commissioners wanting to exclude the property at 101 South Fairfield. But I also wanted to point out the letter also talks about the property that's immediately adjacent to the east, which is on 111 Kimball. And the letter also talks about that, and it talks about our thoughts about west of Kimball is different because it is served by sewer. It's got a little different character. There are multiple, different commercial properties there, and it is immediately adjacent to another commercial area. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that we covered that. We do appreciate the staff recommendation and the commissioners modifying their petition. But with that, I want to give Shane a chance to speak.
Thank you, David, and thank you for having me today. Shane Allen, Chief Investment Officer for Regency Multifamily. We do own the Hadley Village Apartments and the parcel adjacent to it. Just wanted to mention that, Regency has been in Bloomington for 50 years. We've been great partners of the community, contribute nearly $500,000 a year to the county in real estate taxes. Do provide some workforce housing in our options in Adams Village development, and outside of 2 legacy properties, we provide conventional non-student housing options. Each property that we have must adhere to strict property standards. That means clean grounds at all times, clean interior, exterior public space, well-maintained facilities, nothing run down or in disrepair. We treat our residents with care and provide them with safe communities where they feel at home. All this allowed us to be selected as the recipient of the CEL Best in Service Award for customer service 17 years in a row. It's something we're very proud of. Our staff's involved in local boards and charities, encourage them to give back. They give them paid time off to do so. So I'm just really saying this to illustrate that our company culture is unlike others. We're very proud of that. We're not like your typical developer. We do try to build properties that fit well within the communities in which we invest. But despite following all the rules, being a good partner of the community for decades, feel like we're being unfairly punished here a little bit with primarily the adjacent lot. Again, appreciate the exclusion of 101 South Fairfield, but still are limited on what we could do with this lot today and 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So, we just, want to make sure everything is viewed and treated fairly. And I would formally invite all of you out to the area. I would be happy to show you guys around anytime. We're an open book. Let you know our thoughts for the area, for the property we have. We think it complements the community well, that area well, serves as a good buffer between the commercial and the residential area. So just feel it's a complex issue. It's not warrant a one-size-fits-all solution, and really hope you consider our request to take a little bit more time, hear from ourselves, and allow us to show you around.
Sir, do you mind if I ask a question about the 111 South Kimball?
Yes.
Is that currently a church?
No, it's a house.
Are you sure? Can you just double check the address or?
It would be this property here. Came on board, but
It's 111 North Kimball. It is 111 North Kimball.
North Kimball, not South Kimball.
Right,
Yes,
that might
okay.
be, yeah.
Okay, that's my,
Yep.
thank you
Sorry
for
about that. Yep.
clarifying. It's, yes.
well, yeah.
Yeah, what's confusing, I don't know where the breakpoint in Kimball is because you got 120.
Fifth Street.
Yeah, it's just like that.
Sense.
Yeah, and that was purchased with the intent under the zoning high density.
Oh, yeah, factored in our decision to purchase, so. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much for testifying today. Are there other members of the community who are here to oppose the downzone? Oh, yes, sir. Please come to the podium and sign in and state your name, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, my name is Dustin Porter, and I live in the area on Quarry Lane. My parcel is like 0.94 of an acre, and as much as I would love it to still be the 80s and 90s, that's just not the case. Bloomington has changed a lot since I moved here in 2001. Like, downtown doesn't look a bit the same, nor does anything around it. But on my lot, I'm worried if we make this change, that'll really inhibit me from being able to prosper in this town. I currently work 2 jobs to afford the mortgage. I would love to farm the rest of the land, oh my goodness, but it's really hard to farm at night. So I'm just trying to say that I don't think keeping things the way they were is any way to move forward. I would love to reflect and look at the past, but I think progression is only possible if we move forward.
That all, Mr. Porter? Thank you, Mr. Porter.
I would, if I might, I would ask you to please contact planning before the commissioners meet on this item, because you may, to talk through what you might want to do on your property to see if it's something you could do because it's Res 1 versus high development. So, I think it would be useful if you have ideas or thoughts about what you want to do to contact planning, our planning staff.
Oh, I've been in talk with people on making improvements and trying to meet my goals as a community member, and I've already got some pretty hard pushback. So I can only imagine that this would only increase that for me.
It may not. It depends on what you want to do. So please, I invite you to do that so we can be more informed.
Gladly, I
Thank
will.
you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anyone online who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? And I'll need the staff to help me with that. Okay.
I don't see any hand raised.
We return to Commissioner Thomas for a rebuttal of, you have 5 minutes to respond to, any of the negative or opposition statements that you heard.
Right. I don't have much to add. I think it's interesting. I can tell who has lived in this area, who has spent time in this area, versus those who look at a map and go, "Oh, it should be this." These are both very unique neighborhoods, and I'm grateful for residents who have talked about that. For the 101 South Fairfield land, so you currently are actually not pre-existing non-conforming under high development even. So just bear that in mind, that no matter what, I think you're going to need to come to us to do anything else with this property. And that would be if we didn't do this at all. So but the carve out is there. So at least, you can rest easier with that. So, I also, for TRG, a mobile home community or manufactured home park is also not high development, part of high development either. So either way, we're already pre-existing non-conforming, which is fine. And again, I've lived like that for 30 plus years, so it works. And just to, again, assure people that a discussion about, oh, you're going to need a variance, well, you might want to add to the back of the house or something like that. You might not need a variance at all, but it's only if you make a change to the property. And that's why I'm curious about what the plans are on Quarry Lane. So again, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been really helpful for us to hear this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Now I'm going to turn to members of the Plan Commission, and beginning with my left, I'd like to see if there are any comments or questions or further discussions. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this that I wanted to share. When I first looked at this on paper, to me, it seemed obvious to me that high density, Siri has comments too, sorry. It seemed obvious to me that high density was the way to go here because it's surrounded largely. It's adjacent to West 3rd Street. It's near Bloomfield Road, all our main arteries through town. But when I look at the actual neighborhoods and drive through the neighborhoods and walk through the neighborhoods, and I also look at the fact that over 70% of the neighbors in each of these areas remonstrated against annexation, that tells me that the majority of the neighborhood does not want denser housing, and they want to remain more open and more rural. So, that's one thought. The other thought that I have is the majority of these houses in this area are more affordable than a lot of the other houses in the area. And I worry that if we zone this to high density, then that could open the door for coming in and tearing down some of these affordable houses and building apartment complexes or building more dense housing that would then, further reduce the affordable homes from our community. So, that's leading me to support reducing the density of this. I think, as Commissioner Thomas and others have said, that there are avenues for particular lots that may make more sense to be higher density. They could be rezoned. They could come before the board. There are lots directly adjacent to Bloomfield Road, for example, that I think would make more sense for higher density, but by zoning them Res 1 tonight, as Commissioner Thomas said, that would allow public input from the neighbors for individual lots to be changed. So I know that was a lot. Those are my high-level thoughts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morris. And now to my right, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Just a couple things. So a lot of my focus here is to kind of relieve some of the onerous burden on residents, not have people come in and demolish things and change the character of your property. And what concerns me most is a lot of people that's their goal that was speaking in favor of this, but you might end up in a situation where it does create a practical difficulty or onerous burden, and all you really want to do is something very simple. And the speed this is moving, it makes me highly uncomfortable, and I'll just go ahead and lay my cards out. If we look to add a waiver of final hearing, I will not be supporting this. A few things. I've heard a lot of comments about multifamily dwellings. Those are permitted with standards. One of those standards is you have to have a sewer connection. It's already been stated that a lot of these homes don't have sewer and they're on septic. So that's not necessarily going to just create this whirlwind of people coming and demolishing these homes and putting up multifamily dwellings. And I'm not sitting here trying to support, hey, let's get those built. The affordability thing, I'm going to kind of toss those conversations out the window because we have no ability to set a price point. So we have no idea of what they're going to try to sell. And I do think there are some solid points that Mr. Morris just alluded to, that, this does allow the opportunity to tear down and rebuild and maybe eliminate a few affordable houses that do exist. That right now is the most compelling thing I've heard, outside of the public's comment of not wanting to change the character. Full disclosure, my high school girlfriend lived off Quarry Lane, and I used to be there all the time. So I really love that area. I played basketball at Twin Lakes, when it was called Sportsplex. That was probably a pretty massive development when it first occurred for the neighborhood, but you probably see a benefit now with some of the trails that go through the woods and things down there. It creates a nice opportunity. So there's a lot of nuances. We just changed a lot with our new ordinances, and I feel like if this was a huge issue, planning would have brought it forward. One of our goals through the process when I first started with the CDO was in 2017, was to move lots into conformity. So if some of our concerns is to limit some major development, I think there's a better avenue than a blanketed approach, because this is going to put a lot of burden on other people's property just to do very simple things, and the cost is going to compound, and then it's going to go to a board where they need a variance, and that's not guaranteed. And one thing about the variance process, it's more like a court. You get sworn in at the podium. You have to have alternative findings and practical difficulties. A practical difficulty that's not supposed to be considered during those discussions is cost. Thank you.
And as president of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I would just like to say that the members who come before us are treated as kindly as you are tonight. And by and large, they leave from the county not having felt as though the process was, that the process was helpful, not harmful or difficult. So I just want to state that we try our best to be inclusive of points of view and to represent and find a way and an avenue for residents to succeed in what they're trying to do without causing harm to their own interests or the interests of properties around them. So I turn now to Colonel Ferris, and then Councilmember Henry, and then the person online. Yeah, I don't know if that is, it may be a member.
And I think they forgot to lower their hand.
I see, okay. So
I am not going to repeat what other folks have said, but I do support the petitioner in this effort. I also will take and support waiving the final hearing.
thank you, Colonel Ferris. Councilmember Henry?
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to add to comments of the surveyor, which I appreciate his insight in thinking through the speed by which we're considering this. I know this is an advisory opinion, and where our decision today, regardless of yes, no, or no, or no comment on it, is really superfluous to what the commission will decide to do with the downzoning. But I do want to say a few things. I feel like we did talk about these together, so it's hard. I think we do have to separate them out a little bit. Each zone here has slightly different character. When it comes to the Sunset Hills space, I want to point back to what Mr. Morris pointed out with high density. We keep saying density, but it's high development. And I think we get triggered by the word density sometimes, and I've heard some comments to that effect that it seems to be about density. Development can be a variety of things. Sunset Hills has some remarkable homes on South Annalee that have been well preserved. They clearly speak to a time period. The homes are different colors. They have this wonderful vista of downtown. And then there are other parcels that I'm surprised don't have nuisance ordinance or nuisance issues that have been reported to our department. I mean, there's some parcels in there that need some help. So when we talk about character, we can talk about historical character. We can talk about nostalgia for when people lived there and what that means in terms of sense of place. But there's an opportunity to, especially with tiny home movements and other types of home structures, to infill on small parcels in ways that not only retain the character, but maybe restore the character. So it's not an either or of a 1 acre lot or a 4x1. There are a lot of middle opportunities for developing these spaces that could be a win-win. The fact that we downzone forecloses on those. And so it creates fewer opportunities as people now, instead of commuting from GE and Otis inward or outward, are now commuting from Catalent or out of town to Greene County and Owen County because that's the affordable housing they can find, strikes me as interesting. They're driving right by an opportunity here that if we had some more creative planning on and eventual resolution of our sewer extension question with the city could be something really interesting. So that's my first comment on that. My second comment has to do with the petitioner and the commissioner's comment about AFA and how we have a very long conversation going on in this corner of town. And if we think back to the 30 years of what this corner of Bloomington looked like, well, 30 years ago, it was a 2-lane SR 37, not an I-69 that was going down it. We didn't have Ken Nunn's law office or the Carasotis and now AMC theaters on that side of town. That was the outskirts of the community. And now we find that it is encapsulated by development from Whitehall, the interstate, north, Culver's to the north, BW3s to the east, and other things going on in that space of these two spaces. I'm worried that 30 more years of downzoning when I'm 75 years old, what this area looks like. It doesn't retain the kind of the development of a mobile home park and apartment housing, and some homes that have been kept up and others that require assistance, or have we thought through this better? And that means this evening we need a little more time to hear from the public that seems surprised that they've been living in a higher density space for almost 30 years and they heard about it in a postcard and some have called in. I mean, there's a lot of parcel owners we haven't heard from yet. and only in one case 25% of some of the parcels are considered historic with the overlay in Sunset Hills. I think we need a little more time to consider, and I hope that the commission takes that space. I would vote against the waiver of final determination tonight in favor of some more time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Henry. And I'd like to speak for a moment because I've been kind of intimately involved over a number of years with what I refer to as annexation areas 3 and 4. I think it would be a mistake to say that the people who live in these areas haven't considered what high development would do to them. They deliberated together as neighbors and as communities, both within annexation area 4 and with the community at large when they remonstrated against involuntary annexation. And their goal, as stated to me when I knocked on doors after doors and sat on driveways, over many years, was to say to me that they were interested in self-determination, which is what they currently have. And number 2, they were interested in preserving the character and the peace that they had eked out for themselves through their investments in their properties, and that they enjoyed the larger lots that they had with the reasonably priced home that they're able to maintain. And so when you look at Zillow and you look at real estate sales in these annexation areas 3 and 4, the property sales are around $200,000 to $250,000. Now, we've built a lot of multi-family homes in the last 3 to 4 or 5 years, and we have, I think I was informed at our last Plan Commission administration meeting, we have 102 kind of zombie PUDs or PUDs that have not been finished. We have 4,600 units that are going to be going in off of Weimer Road at the Sudbury Farm. We have 371 units that are going in at Park Square Lane and West 3rd Street. I mean, we've been building almost everything but single-family homes. So I think there's something to preserve. It's a way of life. It contributes to the diversity of the housing stock, which is one of our proclaimed values. We would like to have diverse housing stock, including single-family homes on lots that allow people to garden, to farm, to can, to live like they have and like they've chosen to do for a long period of time. So I'm going to be supporting this petition. I believe that the public has spoken. In annexation area 3, 67% of the property owners remonstrated, and in annexation area 4, 74% remonstrated. And all of that effort was to say, stop harassing us. And I think that this downzoning goes toward protecting the interests that the property owners have expressed to me over and over again over several years now. So I am supporting this as well as a waiver of final hearing. Councilmember Henry?
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll be brief, Commissioner, so we can get your question in. I actually have a question for staff and then a comment. And maybe it's a question for petitioner too that helps me understand. So the farms, that area has a diversity of forms in there. And we have an apartment building, we have mobile homes, we have lots, we have empty lots next to single family homes. What would prevent this from being a PUD over a res? Is there anything? Why not pursue the PUD to help alleviate some of the pressures we heard from some of the owners?
So typically a PUD is actually a distinct zone away from the county development ordinance. So we don't actually have development standards for a PUD. So as part of the request for a PUD, you would have to set up what the lot sizes were, what the setbacks would be, what the impervious cover, the uses. So you'd basically mirror everything you want to change about the CDO and create a PUD.
emergency management brain in me is concerned about any mobile homes that do not have a shelter. And so it triggered a comment or a thought that I had about that particular space. I just want to offer just another comment. I've said my piece regarding my position that I have the unique distinction of being a remonstrator. I'm on Margaret's list with her other hat that she wears. And so I don't necessarily equate annexation policy with all of what we've heard tonight. I think that there may be A to C without a B in that step. And so while I appreciate the passion of folks that maybe equate being against annexation or involuntary annexation into the city because it may mean something like more density, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means that you may not want to pay the taxes in the jurisdiction. It may be a variety of reasons why one would sign a petition. So as one of those people, I have sort of a slightly different take on that. And I think it's really important to draw that distinction. And secondly, to say that as a plan commission, for me to even understand that evidence, I would love to see those anecdotes presented in this context. But if they've been collected through another hat that you wear, and I can't see those pieces of information, I can't really use those to make a judgment this evening. But
Well,
thank you, Madam President.
I would like to respond to that. First of all, I believe you live in annexation areas 1A or 1B, and annexation areas 3 and 4 are very different. And I do see the lineage from A, B, and C in that originally these areas were intended for annexation. That agreement stopped, and they are stuck with this this designation of high development that they, and in the midst of having changed the CDO. So something's not fitting, and we're trying to take care of it, keeping in mind the public record of the people who have remonstrated. And yes, I do wear different hats, but it's very much a matter of the public record. And I just stated it. In fact, I just stated it from the auditor's record from her certification tonight, which was made very public. So I don't think that that's an aberration, or at least I'm not speculating. I'm giving facts that were publicly certified. And this particular HD designation is an artifact of something that didn't happen. And the residents have spoken. Let's just fix it and downzone it.
May I speak as a plan commissioner? Sorry, multiple hats today. We're all wearing lots of hats. I just want to be very clear about the fact that residential 1 permits a number of opportunities: residential storage structure, roadside stand temporary, so you could sell the eggs and the vegetables from your garden. Accessory dwelling units, attached or detached. So, and 2-family dwelling. So there are some opportunities to create other types of infill that I think we probably would agree would be great in this area, especially on some of these larger lots, if that's what the resident wants. The connection with annexation is simply that if a city annexes county properties, they would have to change the zoning or use the current zoning. So in a sense, this is part of that notification system. It doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means that it's not something that's going to happen while people are peacefully enjoying their property and be unaware that they're suddenly in an area with multifamily housing that they hadn't anticipated. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you all again. I appreciate everybody's comments and thoughts on this. It's been really helpful. So thank you all.
Is there a motion for this item?
I'd be willing to make a motion. Sean, if you could put the recommendation back up on the screen.
Is this for both or just one at a time?
I think personally, I was going to make a motion for one.
I'll go to the first one, the Sunset Hills one first.
Okay. For case REZ-25-1, I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan with the following consideration. And I'm going to make the consideration that we remove 717 South Annalee Lane through 725 South Annalee Lane from this petition. I would also support waiver of final hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation for REZ-25-1, which is all of the petition numbers as stated in the agenda, excluding 717 through 725 South Annalee Lane. And this also includes a waiver of final hearing. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners. David Bush?
Yes.
Margaret Clements?
Yes.
Trina Enright Randolph?
Just knowing the impervious surface on some of these lots would be very informative to understand what impacts are going to take place. I hope maybe you could take that to the commissioners as you move this forward, because I speculate that it's going to get the support it needs today. I'm going to say no.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Rudy Fields?
Yes.
David Henry?
No.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-2.
Okay, I can make a motion for REZ-25-2 and 25-3. My motion will be that I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan with the following considering by the Plan Commission. And I'm going to recommend that we remove 101 South Fairfield Drive, 2542 West Evergreen Drive, 415 North Kimball Drive, 215 North Johnson Avenue, 325 North Johnson, 2312 West Beaumont Lane, and 120 South Kimball Drive from this petition. And I'm also going to recommend that we waive the final hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation for REZ-25-2 and REZ-25-3, the Maple Groves Farm rezone from HC to Res with a waiver of final hearing and excluding the parcels as noted in the staff report. And I will go ahead and repeat for the record. 101 South Fairfield, 2542 West Evergreen Drive, 415 North Kimball, 215 North Johnson, 325 North Johnson, 2312 West Beaumont Lane, and 120 South Kimball Drive. A vote yes is a vote to send a positive recommendation to the commissioners and waiver of final hearing tonight. Margaret Clements?
Yes.
Trina Enright Randolph?
Same previous comment, and I'm going to vote no.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Rudy Fields?
Yes.
David Henry?
No.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
I'm not as happy about having the mobile home park, manufactured home parks excluded because they are still non-conforming, but I'm going to go ahead and vote yes.
David Bush?
One comment before I vote. I did want to encourage any of the public who are either for or against. You will get another opportunity to speak and be heard before the county commissioners vote on the same. So I vote yes.
Motion does pass 6-2. And on that note, Mr. Bush, for anyone that's attending in person or online that would like to get updates on when the county commissioners meeting will occur, please write down our email address. It's planningoffice@co.monroe.in.us. Or our phone number if you have questions, and that's easier for you to contact us, is 349-2560.
I just want to thank the public for coming and speaking with us tonight and sharing with us your insights about your neighborhood. Thank you. Okay, we have 3 items left on the agenda, and one item, the first one is 5 SIA-22-7 Holland Fields Phase 2 Subdivision Improvement Agreement.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, let's take a 5-minute break.
Does anybody
Let's
object?
Go through, should we, is it possible?
break.
Yeah, thank you, you're welcome. Is it possible to go through the 3 Holland Fields together?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
And actually, there is a request
Yes.
for SIA-22-7, and then item number 6, which is SIA-22-9. This is Holland Fields Phase 2 and Holland Fields Phase 1. The petitioner and his representative are here this evening. They would like to request that we continue this until May 20th, 2025. There's a 2-page letter that is before you,
Yes.
kind of describing what's going on. Planning staff has concerns about that. We do have a letter of credit for Phase 2 that expires on April 18th, 2025. And we also have another letter of credit that expires on May 14th. Let's see. Yeah, May 14th, 2025. So it kind of leaves some ambiguity to staff as to how do we administer these letters of credit. We have to have those on hand. We cannot drop the ball on those or that money goes away. So by them requesting until May 20th, 2025, like that's a date after when we need to be collecting letter of credits. Yes, Julie.
So I guess my question is, can they not be ready for April?
I guess
15th.
you might want to hear the petitioner or the representative and look at the letter before making that decision on if you want to continue this or not. Does that sound fair, Jackie? Did you want to add anything? Is it not shared? I'm so sorry.
I mean, do we have to grant this? No.
We do not. So we did not do it as part of the agenda tonight on purpose because of this concern and the difference between staff's recommendations. So what I will note is that, you know, even if they do post a new letter of credit that extends 1 year from the time of expiration, so let's say they want to extend the letter of credit until April 18th, 2026, that does not preclude the Plan Commission from hearing of the performance period extension and either approving or denying that. If they approve it, we would still adjust for inflation. The reason we've timed these on the agendas with the letter of credit expiration is so that when they already have to go to the bank and get a new letter of credit, we can get that amount corrected to include that inflation. So we don't have to keep coming back all the time to do a new letter of credit with a new amount plus a performance period extension, if that makes sense. So it would be our preference to hear these. If they do need a continuance to April, like Julie mentioned, we had discussed that with the petitioners originally, but then their letter tonight states that they need more time. I did have a question to the petitioner because it does raise the question. They are stating that the as-built requirements are what needs the time, but then they're also stating in that same letter that the as-builts are onerous and expensive. So I wasn't sure if the additional time, what we would expect as a plan commission, as a staff, what are we going to get with that additional time? And that is a question I think the plan commission could ask of the petitioner.
And I don't have that letter. Is that letter just online or is it on paper? Oh, I got one. Never mind. Thank you so
Also,
much. I will get this
I
back to you.
did flash it on the screen too, but it's probably easier
No,
to
it's
read.
okay. Thank you.
So what are our courses of action here?
So we can roll through the rest of the PowerPoint tonight. We are recommending that we do grant the performance period extensions, but I think that the petitioner is wanting to make sure that they're aware of the estimate that it's going to entail. because we do see a need for, especially phase one of Holland Fields, that deals with the sidewalks along the north side of East Holland Drive that will need to be removed and replaced, and then curb and gutter into South Walnut Street Pike. Those two items are not included in the amount that they currently have on file. So
Do we normally move forward without the petitioner even being here to comment?
the petitioner for Holland Fields is here.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So if you would like to, we could expedite our PowerPoint here. We still are looking for a recommendation on whether to continue, approve, or deny. Those are your three actions.
Okay, well, yes, we'd like an expedited review.
Okay.
And I will take them one at a time, and then we'll hear from the petitioner, we'll hear.
All right, so before you is the letter that they had for continuance that you guys hopefully have had a moment to like glance through. The first one that we're gonna cover is phase 2. And it has an earlier expiration date of April 18th, 2025. So that's gonna be coming up on us soon for us to collect a letter of credit. In my mind, this is a little bit of an easier petition. This is phase 2 for Holland Fields. We do see that it could, there are no finished roads that it could completely connect to for an immediate acceptance into the inventory. There's a possibility that it could go towards the east on East Holland Drive, but that development hasn't quite finished yet, and that road has not been accepted into the inventory. And also with Crestline Drive, the phase 3, we won't be hearing that until September. But that also is not quite done yet and ready for acceptance. So just keep that noted. So the progress of improvements here, they have 18 of the 21 lots are built out in this phase. The roads have been installed, but we haven't quite had those accepted into the inventory and fully reviewed by the highway department. Most of those sidewalks are installed. We have 2 segments that are missing on lot 23 and 42. And then the stormwater infrastructure looks like it's been installed. We still need to just kind of get as-built, make sure it can be, brought into the inventory. And then one note was that there was a preliminary plat amendment to phase 2 and phase 3. And during that time of the phasing changed, and they put the bioretention, which is in the estimate for this phase 2. But now it is in phase 3, so it doesn't reflect it correctly. But from looking at it, it's pretty much complete. So once they do come before us for a reduction, that might be a moot point. And they do have an application for a reduction on file under SIA-24-6, but we are still reviewing that under the historical right-of-way acceptance application, HRWA-18, with the highway department. So once, they kind of sign off through that application, we can then tie it back to the reduction, and you would be hearing that again to release any funds. And they have a lot of their trees are installed. And as far as driveways, I'm not going to comment on the driveways at this time because I don't feel like they've been assessed properly for phase 2. We heard about the background for an SIA petition last month when we were listening to the Derby Drive petition. I don't know if you need me to review this part, but we're looking to update a performance period and have that reflected on an SIA under our new CDO. We're requiring developers to update the document and to include a new timeline and plus the new estimate that adjusts for that annual 10% inflation. This is the original SIA that we have on file, and it states that the timeline for completion was October 20th, 2022. So that is an expired SIA. We need a new one on file. We have talked with the petitioner, and they've requested a timeline of April 18th, 2026. And just a little summary of where we're at with how much money is on file and when that expires. month, we went over what the performance period is tied to. It's mostly like when they're going to get these public improvements done and get these accepted into the county inventory. Doesn't mean that they can't still be building houses. Those lots can still, the vacant lots could still be getting permits for houses, but we want to make sure that like infrastructure is in place, you know, so that it functions as an actual subdivision and HOA can accept it, you know, their responsibilities. So we assume that the developer would be required to adjust for inflation. The original estimate we have on file is $112,000 and $82.85. And that included a maintenance bond at the time when we were dealing with this. Under the new CDO, we're not including the maintenance bond in these letters of credit, but we are requiring that 10% inflation. So it's interesting. It just kind of, it's a moot point. We're asking for the same amount of money to be posted again, unless they submit an updated estimate, or, you know, very quickly we can get some as-built in place to show that they want to do a reduction for this phase 2. So in this case, staff recommends approval of the performance period extension until April 18th, 2026. If approved, staff will require that new estimate that complies with inflation to incorporate into a new subdivision improvement agreement and a performance bond document with the approved timeline of April 18th, 2026, accompanied by the new financial guarantee amount of $112,000, $82.85. And that letter of credit or a cashier's check is due by April 18th, 2025. And we did consult with the highway department and the stormwater program, and they're in agreement with the extension. Does it say release of, did I just not update that? I think I'm just going to say their agreement with the extension period. I'm not going to say the release of financial guarantee. That might be like carried over from a different PowerPoint presentation. But we do hope to see them back here soon for a reduction on phase 2. Does anyone want to make any comments or questions, or would you want me to tackle phase 1 next?
I mean, do you have questions now, or could we hold them? Yeah, let's go to phase 1. Yeah.
Okay. So for phase 1, this is SIA-22-9. Oh, did I just? Sorry. Yes, it says phase 2, but this is for phase 1. So the request for this one. And we have that continuance that they're wanting to do. Phase 1 is this area outlined and highlighted in yellow, and that includes the roadway that extends all the way to South Walnut Street Pike. It does not include the 3 lots to the north, right there at the intersection of North Walnut Street Pike. We will be covering that next, and that is a separate developer. But they are intertwined to some degree, and we can explain that. I can answer questions about that later. So with this one, all 19 lots are built out in this phase. The roads have been installed but don't have their as-builts fully reviewed. Sidewalks are installed, but the highway department has identified a few issues with the ADA compliance, which would prevent it from being accepted into the county inventory. Stormwater infrastructure is mostly complete. I will note that there is a requirement. I'll bring it up in a minute, but we still need to see some curb and gutter at the intersection of East Holland Drive and South Walnut Street Pike designed and installed. And then, you know, we're still keeping track of their street trees, and the bioretention lot does appear pretty much complete. Still looking for, I think, some finalized as-builts, and there just a little bit of landscaping to finish. Again, we have a reduction that was requested quite a while ago, SIA-22-22. But again, we're kind of stuck with historical right-of-way acceptance application, HRWA-17 in the highway department. It's not complete. I think they're still needing some information to be able to give us the go-ahead to allow for a reduction here. A couple of things to point out. This is facing east along East Holland Drive. So right at the back of the photographer here, which was me, would be South Walnut Street Pike. So there are these two driveways that are rather steep. These are actually driveways that belong to that 3-lot Holland Minor by a different developer, but they will impede and be problematic for getting these accepted into the inventory. So there does need to be some kind of correction made here to be able to do that. And you can also see that the curb and gutter kind of stops right here, and this intersection needs to be completed. I have another depiction of the intersection here showing that the curb and gutter are not in. I kind of went over this background piece already. The original SIA states that it expired December 15th, 2020. The developer is requesting a timeline completion of May 14th, 2027. So this is a 2-year performance period extension. That's the amount they have posted, 123,000 plus. And their letter of credit expires a little bit later, May 14th, 2025. We already talked about this background of the performance period, and they're asking for 2 years in this case. So when we look at it, their current estimate shows $565,004. Planning is unsure actually like what the estimate should be right now. We still need to see an intersection designed. We need that estimate on file for what that intersection correction is going to be. We probably need updated estimates as to like how to correct the driveways that have been installed and need to be redone. So we're really unclear as to like if that is the correct estimate number. If it is, or if it's close to the ballpark, then we start to add the inflation over those 2 years. And, you know, at a minimum, I think we're looking at $134,993,000.70. Again, that doesn't include the maintenance bond this time. We're pulling that out of these calculations.
Because it's not applicable?
We used to just require that 10% maintenance bond. And
We used to post 110% of the cost up front, and then the maintenance bond can never be reduced. So the 10% maintenance bond has to be of the original amount, not any reductions thereafter.
Got it.
So the reason we're posting it is just to remind everyone, hey, even if this gets reduced, we still are taking 10% of the original.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So staff was able to find the results letter that was given to the petitioner on January 13th, 2016. And these are all conditions of approval. There were 14. And one of them, condition number 10, it states, at the intersection of Holland Drive and Walnut Pike, wrap curb and gutter around the radius and tapers, transition curb and gutter height to 0 at the end of curb and gutter. So that was a request from the highway department. It is a condition of approval, so it is something that they're supposed to do as a part of phase 1. So this does need to be added to the estimate. We need to know what that is going to look like, and it's going to, interestingly, have to also incorporate the next petition that you're going to hear for the Holland 3-lot miners sidewalk. So there needs to be some, you know, collaboration between the two developers here. So in this instance, staff recommends approval of the performance period extension until May 14th, 2027. If approved, staff will require a new estimate with the required improvements, kind of with relation to that condition number 10, that complies with inflation, to incorporate into a new subdivision improvement agreement and the performance bond document with the approved timeline of May 14th, 2027, accompanied by a new financial guarantee amount of at least $134,993.70. The revised letter of credit is due May 14th, 2025, and we did consult with the Highway Department and Stormwater Program and their agreement of the extension here. And I will say, like, yeah, you will want to hear from the petitioner on this, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? No? 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 I don't think there are questions for staff. We'll hear from the petitioner. Mr. Allen, if you'd come up. If you would kindly sign in, it helps Barb keep a clean record. You know, thank you.
Handwriting's getting worse as the night goes on, so I apologize for that.
It must be terrible at this point.
It's pretty bad, actually. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Larry Allen, I'm speaking on behalf of Hybrid Investment Group. I appreciate the opportunity. I also just want to extend a word of thanks. We've been getting up to speed on this, me in particular, so it's really just personal for staff providing everything for us. We've had a lot of conversation. We're going to have a lot more. I just want to, in terms of the big picture and jumping off what we've already heard in the staff report, some of the information that's been missing here is exactly what we want to address, and that's why we're asking for the 2-month continuance to make sure that we have some things in hand so that this is a concrete conversation that we don't have to keep coming back and having over and over again, and particularly with the reduction. I know you all have heard a ton of information tonight. I'll try to be succinct and go through it as quickly as I possibly can. In terms of, you know, what we've heard already and what we all agree upon, I think Phase 2 is very close. I think we all acknowledge that Phase 2 is probably in the best position. And even as the developer, I don't think anyone's satisfied that Phase 1 remains incomplete. And we want to make sure that that's resolved as fully and as completely as we possibly can and get those infrastructure improvements. They mostly are done. One of the things that makes this case a little confusing and a little bit procedurally unusual is the fact that, unlike other developments like you even heard tonight, occupancy permits have already been issued in large parts of this neighborhood. So there are people living in these houses already, and some of the permits that they had to pull when they were constructing their houses for the driveways, for instance, have not been closed out. Those were not done by this developer. They were done by the builders of each individual houses. So just to clarify that point, when we're talking about this subdivision and the improvements, certainly we're talking about the roads and the sidewalks and all the stormwater improvements, but we're not necessarily talking about the driveways themselves. Those are subject to independent permits and independent inspections by the Highway Department. But we want to clarify with everyone because in some cases, this has been pending as noted. I think the first as-builts for Phase 1 were submitted in 2022. This has been pending for some time, and we're already on the second and third owners of those houses. And so it's very important that we kind of have a collaborative approach and kind of understand what everybody's roles are, what's necessary to be done, what the Highway Department's role is going to be, and what our role is going to be. In terms of, again, I'm going to talk about the extension largely, but this will fill in some of the issues that are ongoing with both phases. As I mentioned, our original as-builts for at least Phase 1 were submitted in May of 2022. Phase 2, they were submitted in October of 2024. As you'll note, you already saw the letter, you've had a chance, but in terms of the as-built requirements were actually revised by the County Highway Department in December of last year, so December 2024. And so we received a new as-built requirements at the end of last year, beginning of this year, that we've been evaluating. Part of the issue that we were trying to work out with the Highway Department, just to be really clear, is whether those driveways are part of this or they're part of the actual builders of the house. We believe those are separate issues, but we want to make sure that we're clear on what we have to do. The as-builts, regardless, are more detailed than what has already been provided. So they are the requested as-builts from the County Highway Department are more detailed than what was provided in 2022. So what we received back when we asked our our engineers to go through and to provide those updated as-built per the new requirements. Just that's where we got the length of time. We were told 8 to 10 weeks, and we want to have a good idea of at least what that's going to look like in terms of what those as-built are going to look like for the sidewalk, for the ADA issues, for what we have remaining, and so that we can kind of have a comprehensive presentation for you, so that not just we're asking for an extension, we're not just asking for a performance extension, but what we're really bringing to you and what we're asking for together is collaboratively a plan to get the subdivision done. And some of that will involve additional work just generally. We've talked about the homeowners. One of the things we heard at your last administrative meeting this month is that there was a desire to have the different developers, as was noted here, of the 3-lot minor and this developer, meet together to resolve some of those issues, particularly on the west part of Holland Drive for phase 1. And that's because, as we've already noted, the driveways were installed by the 3-lot minor. That's covered by the 3-lot minor. The sidewalk was initially installed by hybrid. And we need to work together to figure out what's going to be a viable solution there. What we've heard from the county is that there are some ADA violations there. They're going to be very tricky to solve, and very tricky to solve in a way where we're not disturbing those homeowners significantly. We're not disturbing the value of those houses. It could result in the lowering of utilities. But regardless of that approach, we need to meet with the other developer who was in fact the constructor of all these improvements, but the other developer, and figure out a plan to move forward. We also worked with staff to determine in terms of the additional curb cuts. Those are things that we've been able to review, and we want to incorporate into those plans and make sure that we're covering those. I did note just really quickly on the photo that was shown, and this isn't, staff is showing the photo that they have. There's an incomplete sidewalk there that is part of the 3-lot subdivision. That incomplete sidewalk is actually not part of phase 1. Just to clarify, staff can correct me, of course, if they feel like I'm wrong, but I think just generally we want to make sure that we're dovetailing whatever solution we have with the other developer, with the homeowners, to make sure that we have the proper ADA solutions. I mentioned that Exhibit 5 in your packet we're reviewing as part of the requirements. We also need to work very clearly on if there's a delay because phase 2 is further to being totally complete than phase 1 at this point. If there's a delay in phase 1, just given one of the things we want to plan out is also how the right-of-way can be accepted into the inventory. And I believe this is something else that you all heard at your last administrative meeting, and why it's important for us to be able to take our time and be very deliberate about this, which is in order to accept that right-of-way, it needs to be connected to existing right-of-way. And there are some contingencies there that we're not sure about right now, that we can't stand here confidently and tell you that we know exactly how those contingencies are going to plan out on what timeline. So for instance, for phase 2, those improvements, the other side of the roads, it would either need to have the Derby Pines development completed to be accepted into the right-of-way, or we need to be able to finish our phase 3, which connects over to Walnut Street Pike, for the highway department to be able to receive this. So that's part of the comprehensive plan I think that we want to develop. We also want to work on the potential designs of the curbs, the extensions, as we talked about, whether that's with the other developer or we're going to be able to do that ourselves. And then also, this is not part of an eventual reduction request, but plan for the installation of where there has been noted missing sidewalk segments, the additional plantings, the trees, the shrubs. There aren't many. I think it's 11 trees on this section, a few shrubs in some of the areas, but those are things, of course, that we're trying to work on and make sure that we have that. And then also, we want to make sure we're having just a robust conversation with staff about how we're treating the vacant lots that are there and what that means, and street trees and sidewalk improvements, and making sure that those are part of what's been met. I think overall, the interest here, and I failed to mention this because this was noted as a reason for not granting our continuance is because of the letters of credit. We have no intention of allowing the letters of credit to lapse. In fact, Hybrid has committed to, it will extend the letters of credit regardless. And if it takes a couple of trips to the bank, that's okay. I think one of the things we want to do is make sure that not only do we have a plan in place, but then also this amount of money is right-sized to what has been completed, what we can cross off the list, and what we really need to work on moving forward. And some of that, I think, warrants a hearing eventually. And ideally, we'd be ready for that by May is part of our reduction requests that have been made and been lingering out there for more than, not quite a year now. I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, Mr. Turner's here with Hybrid Investment Group, so he's available to answer any questions or if he feels like I missed anything.
Hey, do members of the Plan Commission have questions? Yes, Mr. Bush.
Yes, I have heard, I've come to this commission recently, so I don't know all the history, but I do know the neighborhood, and I drive by the uncompleted sidewalks that you're alluding to from the other developer on a daily basis almost. And my heart goes out to the people in those neighborhoods that can't get their neighborhood accepted into the county highway system so they get services like they should. So, and I know that I've heard conversation that both the developers are working toward a resolution. Could you or somebody elaborate on where you stand on that timeline as to when you're going to get a resolution?
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to use this time for. Is a couple of our preliminary steps have been to meet with staff to make sure that we're clear on everything that needs to be completed for these to be able to be accepted into the right of way, what needs to be done as it was approved under the initial approvals of the subdivisions. And we have not, as far as I've been aware, and Mr. Turner can correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't been able to sit down with the other developer at this point and hammer out how we're going to deal with these, because I think we were still in an information gathering mode about kind of trying to understand everything that was on the list so that we can go through and kind of, we're not doing it piecemeal. I think as Ms. Jellin has pointed out, planning director, I'm sorry, I apologize for using the planning director has pointed out, is that, you know, if there are infinite resources, you could do this quickly, but there's not infinite resources, and we're dealing with multiple parties. And so one of the things we want to do is to be able to negotiate that, have a sense of what our real responsibility is and what that developers, and I'm sure they're on tonight so they can explain their role in it and how they would want to work with us as well.
Yeah, I would, as a follow-up, I would be interested in hearing what sort of collaboration or appetite for resolving this quickly you've been getting from the other developer.
And just frankly, I mean, there's no way around that. Just frankly, on phase one in particular, where we're talking about the driveways and where the sidewalk is, with the solutions that we've been talking about, most of them are bad. Let's be very clear about that in terms of railing and having that be maintained by homeowners. I don't think anybody truly wants that. If that's the only solution we can come to, of course, we'd work with staff to make sure that it's ADA compliant that way. But if we're talking about lowering that sidewalk, lowering where those driveways are going to meet, and lowering the utilities underneath the sidewalk, again, which has already been done, I think, at least once, there's no way that we're going to get around negotiating and talking to the other developer.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's actually for both staff and the petitioner. So you mentioned, Ms. Bierman, that this amount is actually not going to be enough, right?
It's unclear.
It's unclear. It may not be
which
enough.
is, I think, why the highway department has really dug their heels in about doing a reduction based upon whatever information they had. Like,
right.
We give some away. It
Right.
may not
We
come back
should
to
not.
you. Yeah.
Right. We should not. Yeah. So then so if we approve this today, but we don't get sufficient letter of credit that includes whatever else has to be included, then that performance period extension fails if we don't get that letter of credit, right?
I think what I've spoke with Mr. Allen about, as well as
the performance period extension and the reduction requests are two separate things. So they need to have a valid agreement on file with us to continue on with the work. So we're looking for that. As far as the amount, we do need those as-built. We do need that updated estimate from them. But I think that if we continue this to another month, and we don't have that performance period extension, those new letters signed, we're kind of going under an old agreement and renewing kind of an old agreement.
Right.
So I think that if they don't update the amount, if they don't give us the as-built with the updated amounts adjusting for inflation, then the Plan Commission or the legal department has, we can forward this in another way. We have some options under the CDO.
Okay. So that having been said, there's nothing on here about a reduction on this piece here, right, that we're looking at.
Neither petition, I'm not presenting anything about a reduction.
Thank
I'm
you.
stating
Okay.
that they have a petition on file, but we're not bringing that before you right now.
Got it. Perfect. I just want to make sure I understood where we were. So this amount may not be right. This amount on the screen may be higher. Obviously, I don't know how we can vote on something if we don't have a number. And so is that number available in April, even if we say, let's postpone part of this petition until May? If we have a number, we could talk about this in April and move forward, even without coming to a decision yet on how you're going to work with the other developer and what's going to happen, what it's going to look like. But at least we could get a better number by April. Is that possible?
I think that's reasonable. The only issue being that part of this update will be tearing out the sidewalk on the north side of East Holland Drive and putting in new sidewalk. So that would, even if we just update an estimate for that amount, I don't know how the developer will work with the other developer to come up with any shortfalls if some of that includes the driveways.
Right. But that's
I
not our issue. That's something they're going to have to deal with.
I think we will
together.
need
And it sounds like they are, which is good.
Yes, I think we will need a design for that stretch. And if that's what's going to take 8 to 10 weeks, then that's understood. I wasn't sure from our email exchanges if we were in fact going to get that new design in that 8 to 10 week period, but yes.
And I think, and Mr. Turner can correct me if I'm wrong, so that is exactly what, that's a piece of some of those updated as-builts. Part of the thing is you have to get the as-builts done, and then you also have to get the design of what the improvements are, and that's part of what is taking so much time. I'm obviously new to this, so I think the planning director and I are trying to communicate effectively together, and sometimes that means talking past each other a little bit, but and just learning each other's communication style. But I think just generally, that is exactly what we're trying to do. It's a comprehensive thing. Again, we don't want our experts and our professionals going 2 different steps. We want them to complete this all at once. We want to have an idea of comprehensively what they need to do to try to preserve some money to be able to put it back into the project. But Mr. Turner, do you have it?
Turner with Hybrid. The issue is going to be getting numbers to get this done properly. First, we have to have a design. Secondly, we need to get numbers. One of those numbers is from utilities to change locations and things like that. That's the only thing I get worried about in terms of getting a real number to you. So that will be our problem. I would suspect easily, if we can work with planning to come up with a design that works for everybody in the next few weeks, having a price by May is no problem. But we're going to need their help, obviously, to solve this. It's not an easy problem. We're regretful that it happened this way, certainly.
Exceptional planning department, and they want to work with people to find solutions, and we need this to be a success for everybody.
Oh, we do too,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, so I would like to just refer to my colleagues here to see if they have any questions. Colonel Ferris?
Guess I'm still kind of confused a little bit on what you're asking us to do this evening.
So
Are we really trying to take in and update the period of performance? And two, come up with a number that's acceptable to everyone here? And is that the number? Because you keep talking about the 10% or whatever. In my line of work in years past, we always would use with planning factors. If in fact you can put a number in there, maybe a little bit higher than what you need, and then adapt and adjust it later, at least you had the high end to protect the county. Now, if this doesn't make sense, you got to tell me it doesn't make sense.
No, I think so. The way that these have been working out is that we're putting out these reports, and it's a good communication tool between staff and the developers to be able to see, okay, here are my next steps. So part of the performance period extension is your next step is to provide us with that estimate and that 10% inflation, which we know to at least be $134,000. If the Plan Commission would like to continue this to get a better updated amount, I think that's reasonable. And I think what I've heard from the petitioner is if continued, we should expect by May a meeting with the developer of the Holland 3-lot minor for resolution, assuming who does what work, a submission of as-built for phase 1 and 2, plus a new design for the East Holland Drive sidewalks, work on the design for curb and gutter to go into South Walnut Street Pike, plus an estimate, and then you're going to work on installing missing infrastructure in that time period. So I think that's helpful for us to know what that time period is for, not address Mr. Ferris's question, but I just wanted to know, is this what we should expect for 2 months?
I think what I want to clarify is just in terms of the installation of missing infrastructure, it would be part of the plans of how to, I don't think that could be installed within the 2 months. I'm not sure what I can't speak to that intelligibly, so I don't think so.
You would have an estimate, though. Yes,
Yeah,
a
that's
solid
exactly right.
estimate.
Yeah.
And also, hopefully, collaboration with the other partners in this process. And I think that it's a good idea to continue it, but I would like to ask procedurally, can we continue it to an admin meeting so that we can meet all the deadlines for all parties involved? So
The first deadline's April 18th, so
we should have
it wouldn't work in the May admin, but
so let's continue it to the April 1st, have a follow-up conversation, and then hold the second one to May for, the first meeting in May, and we'll treat this unless my colleagues object, like a normal Plan Commission meeting so we can hear input from.
okay. So a status update on April 1st.
I'd like that. Does that work for you guys?
And provide it.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically we have a process, I think.
So
What can we expect in that update on April 1st?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. I'm wondering if we can get from our side that ballpark. I mean, no one's going to hold them to it because I understand there's a lot, but if we could get a better financial guarantee amount that's more comprehensive and get that in there, we could ostensibly in April vote on continuing the performance period. So we could extend the performance period. We'd have a known amount for a letter of credit. Is that possible?
We can extend to April. I can talk with our highway department. I am rereading the code under the county development ordinance, and it does say the performance bond shall be approved by the commission and shall be based upon an approved engineer's estimate or valid contractual amount if available. That includes 10% inflation for each year. So I do have I do think that we can use, our valid contracts that we've had or estimates that we've had, and work with the petitioner. Certainly, if they're thinking that we're totally off base, then we can come back to the table, but at least we would have a ballpark, so we can try and work on that with them.
Does that work? Because I feel like that's what we're missing here is what the next step is.
That works, but I also want to take and confirm that this stops at the Plan Commission, right? This does not go to the county commissioners.
Right, that's correct. So,
Right. So is everybody in agreement with that?
So it would be a continuance to the April 15th regular meeting,
Yes,
which would be before the first letter of credit expires
That
of the
sounds
two projects.
perfect.
Okay.
I forgot how late in March it is. You know,
Okay.
so, yeah.
So moved?
So, is that a?
Is that a motion or is that?
I did not make a motion. but-
I'm just gonna,
Try.
just, Madam President, just for procedure, we didn't do the public, since this is a petition.
Oh, that's true.
It's getting late.
Okay, I'd like to ask if there's any member of the public who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this petition. If so, please raise your virtual hand, or if you're in the room, come to the podium. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter? There's no one? No one? Okay, so if one of my colleagues would be so kind as to make the motion? April
15th.
April 15th.
Madam President, I can make the motion.
Thank you.
On the matter of the, what are the numbers that we had there, which I just closed. Do you have them in front of you?
Let's see. It just,
On the matter of SIA-22-7 and 22-9, I motion that we continue to our next meeting of April 1st for consideration. I'm sorry, April 15th?
April 15th.
April 15th.
Second.
Okay, it's been a motion and a second to continue it to the next regular meeting of the Plan Commission on April 15th. I'll go ahead and call the roll for both SIA-22-7, which is Phase 2, and SIA-22-9, which is Phase 1. A vote yes is a vote to continue both petitions to April 15th. Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Rudy Fields,
Yes.
David Henry,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
David Bush,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, both pass, 8-0.
we have one more.
Yeah, we have one more.
Wait, it's after time. Do we need to vote to continue?
Is everyone okay with going ahead? Is anybody opposed? We have one more. Let's just plow through it, everyone. Okay, so we have SIA-22-18, Holland 3-lot minor subdivision, and I guess it's just a status update, right? Or
Well, it's really a performance period renewal request. We decided to call it that because this one doesn't have it's not a letter of credit that is tied to this one. It's a cashier's check.
See.
But we still need to have an updated performance period and all the documents that go along with it. So this is the 3 lots that are by a different developer, but they were also the person who installed much of the infrastructure for Holland Fields Phase 1. And again, you'll see that the intersection kind of right here is what we've been talking about. I have found some interesting old emails kind of discussing like that they were trying to purchase this lot so that they could correctly install those curb and gutters. Yeah, the old emails, I saved them.
Wow.
Again, it's right up here. The progress for this is they have 2 of the 3 lots are built out. Lot 3 is actually owned by Smithville Telephone Company because it's the little square right here that they originally had, and we kind of left it as a leased area, but they went ahead and purchased the whole lot. There weren't any roads required as a part of the subdivision, and they do have 119 linear feet of sidewalks that still need to go in. All of their street trees are installed already. The amount we have on file is that $5,115. Probably not enough to do all of those sidewalks at this point. So this is the area right here that we're mostly talking about. Again, they realize this needs to be integrated into this other sidewalk here and still be ADA compliant. So the design needs to kind of cohesively like work for both of the subdivisions. And again, I will say that there was not a permit pulled for this work. Usually when we see a grading permit, we get construction plans. We might have flagged this and seen it had we actually had a permit on file for this work. Again, we see condition 10 requiring that curb and gutter. Just a reminder from the other phase 1. I bring up these driveways again. I will say that from what I've learned, that lot 2 here actually never had a driveway permit on file. When they filed this permit, when they actually weren't supposed to, they used a demolition driveway permit and it slid through our system. They slid 2 things through our system. And this house here shouldn't have gone in as early as it did, and it might have been different had they waited. Again, pointing out these are the driveways. I think some of you said you had a chance to get out there to kind of look at them. I apologize for not including those addresses. I should have sent those to you guys. And here's the other one here that we're talking about. Background, we already did that. The original SIA basically states it expired in 2021. We have talked with the developer for this one. They wanted to extend it to June 30th of 2026. They have a cashier's check on file right now for this amount. It does not expire, but it's also likely not enough to cover everything. So what we're hoping to get is a new estimate for the design of that sidewalk. Also then, you know, how it's going to be installed, if any grade work or utilities need to be dealt with at that time. So we're looking for a new estimate here. Staff recommends approval of the performance period extension until June 30th, 2026. And then we have some actions required that we'd want to see by May 30th, 2025, and that's to provide staff with new engineered construction plans for installing the sidewalk, with an estimate that complies with the inflation requirement. Also, an engineered plan set should remedy those non-conforming driveways, maybe actually pull a permit for lot number 2. That would work for us. And then assign the performance bond document with that updated information and the subdivision agreement document with the performance end date. And then finally provide staff with a new bond of either a letter of credit or cashier's check to replace that existing cashier's check. So,
Would I ask, is there a benefit to making the date kind of conform with the May 20th deadline that the other, is there a benefit to
continuing to some degree, you're saying?
Just making sure that the collaboration, that we have a little bit of muscle on the collaboration. You know, I don't know if changing that date from May 30th to May 20th gives us a little muscle to kind of try to force some collaboration. Because then, you know, maybe we do or we don't extend the bond, you know.
Right. That's fine. I mean, the other dates were kind of tied to when letter of credits were expiring. This one doesn't have an expiring, you know, financial guarantee. So we just pulled out a number and or a date, so it's fine.
Great. And do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Okay, do members of the public, would you care to speak on this? Mr. Allen or Mr. Turner? No? Okay, so we come back for deliberation and or a motion. I would like to see
see what you see right there, but May 20th.
I'm not super versed in this. I'm still kind of getting settled. Would it be helpful to move this to our administrative and meeting and discuss it then, and kind of keep these two parallel? And if that's doesn't seem necessary, that's fine. I'm just trying to
Just
still.
ask staff, what would you like to see?
So I think that the change of the actions required by May 20th is helpful. Similar to the last petition, we don't have an updated estimate for what it's going to cost to do that sidewalk along South Walnut Street Pike because we are not able to do that engineering work in-house. But I think they're working with the same design group, and so giving them until May 20th would likely give us that time period. But I think if you approve the performance period extension to 2026, that gives the developer of Holland Fields Phase 1 an understanding of their timeline to be absolutely finished. And then if their timeline is thereafter, then they will know that that developer has to do their part first, and then possibly they come second.
You're a good juggler. So let's just, if we could have a motion on that, the performance period extension until June 30th, 2026, and the actions. May 20th, yes, but we do need it made. I can't make it because I'm the chair.
Okay, I can make a motion
Yes.
for case SIA-22-18. I move approval of the performance period extension until June 30th, 2026, and also actions required by May 20th, 2025 are the three items listed in tonight's packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the performance period extension, SIA 22-18. This would be until June 30th, 2026. But as stated in the recommended motion, the actions are required of the developer by May 20th, 2025, as listed in the staff report. A vote yes is a vote to approve the performance period extension. Tron and Ray Randolph?
Yes.
Scott Ferris?
Most definitely, yes.
David Henry?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
Yes.
David Bush?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
I'm sorry, am I missing 1, 2, 3?
Just a second. There might be reports.
I do not have any reports.
Oh.
Sorry, that motion did carry 7-0. I had an old name on there.
Jackie Rudy did not vote.
Oh, Rudy Fields. I'm sorry. There was an old last member, Rudy Fields.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
7-0. We got 8 people here.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, is there anybody object to adjourning? No, okay. Thank you, everyone, for your good service tonight. Thank you for your thoughtful inputs.